I'll be honest with you, I wasn't going to go live yet, but I hit the live button too quickly. So now we're live, and I'm not prepped or set up yet. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. Give me a second. Let me get the intro music set up, and I'll be back on in about maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah, I will always be a warrior. You can't stop me, you can't stop me now. Yeah, I will always be a warrior. You can't lock me, you can't lock me down. I will not lay down my arms. Ready to be covered in scars. Cause I will always be a warrior. Late nights, get lost, hard work, the cost. Can't quit, can't stop. This world all cut off. Don't have time to waste, not now. Need to find a way to get out. Cause I'm gone in deep. Get lost in the weeds. You know it's all about the conquest. What's next? You gotta put the work in like you're obsessed. Think about what you want, what's your future? What kind of person would it take to seduce her? So what's next? Be obsessed with winning and your success. Make progress, this life is never promised. So feel blessed, live life, don't be too cautious. Trust the process. In too deep, I'll never quit. I wanna see this through. Yeah, I'm all in, and I will hold my head up high. Got what it takes to fight and survive. Yeah, I will always be a warrior. You can't stop me, you can't stop me now. Yeah, I will always be a warrior. You can't lock me, you can't lock me down. I will not lay down my arms. Ready to be covered in scars. Cause I will always be a warrior.
Hey. All right. So I'm not expecting a big audience today. I'm hoping everybody's with their families. But if for some reason you had a fight with your family or you're alone for Thanksgiving, you are more than welcome to hang out with me on my channel for Thanksgiving night. All right. So let's get. Hey, calm down. It's okay. All right. So let's start off with the very last thing, which is, man, I have been listening to the Arcane soundtrack for season two. It's my workout music. It's my driving music right now. I love the soundtrack from the first season. I liked it before I saw the show. So the music was just music. It didn't have any ties to the show for me outside of the intro, because the intro was kind of obvious. And of course, Get Jinxed is, I mean, clear. But listening to the second season, I'm listening to the soundtrack after it releases, and man, every song is hitting like 10 times as hard as it really should. I was even swaying my hips a little bit to that French song. Wow. By the way, just to be clear, it's not as impressive that I like French music. I actually, when I used to have Sirius XM, I would listen to the French music channel all the time, both the Canadian French one and I think there's a French one. I'm not really sure, but I would listen to French rap, French music. I happen to like French music for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with Before Sunset. I'm not sure. All right, so today here is what we are covering. We are going to be covering good old Asmongold, Two Perspectives. We're going to be getting into Breaking Points. I'm not sure if they're good to watch or not. I don't know if they're copyright happy. We'll find out. We're going to be listening to Matt Bernstein because I've seen him show up on two different people that I watch, so I kind of want to see what he's about. We may or may not do side scrollers. Again, I'm not sure how slap happy they are with copyright claims. We're going to go to This Guy's Garage to continue on the War of Freedom, and then we're going to end either with Base Camp in the post-election Vide shift, continuing on with that theme, or we're going to end with Ramsey Dewey. Ramsey Dewey is a martial artist that I really respect. He happens to be a martial artist in China. I may or may not open up a martial arts studio in China in the future because life is weird like that. And that's a real thing that could happen. And basically, that's what we're going to do. We were going to do Christy Burke. I want to be very clear. My original plan for tonight's show was Christy Burke. She released 2 videos today on Christian nationalism. And I was going to do it as blind reacts. But I wanted to sample, see what she was saying. So I just jumped into her intro. In her intro, she said some self-deprecating stuff there that, while supposed to be relatable, sounded more like a confession. So I don't want to do a deep dive on that without being prepped. So I think I want to listen to her first to see if there's anything there that's I can remark on that it's not just attacking her. As you know, I really love a creator called Mitra. She's a Luciferian, but she takes the commentary on the things that she says, even though I'm just talking about normal Christianity and normal atheistic perspectives, as not an attack, but as like an examination of the things that she says. So she doesn't. That's why we're not going to do as much of her material anymore, because while she says she's open to challenge and into questions, she doesn't seem to enjoy the actual process of listening to a video disagree with her. So, on the other hand, Christy Burke seems ready to engage, but I don't want to engage her unless what she's saying is actually related to the topic and not just her paranoia and her distrust of Christianity, because that does come across in some of her videos. So that's what we're going to do. That's our plan for tonight. Next week, I guess, expect a Christy Burke week, which would be cool. I like that she's doing a series. Tell her that, if you're watching it here, go watch it on her channel and tell her that I sent you, because over here you can hear just my commentary. Go listen to her original video and tell her that I sent you there, and maybe me and her can have a debate here, or once I'm living somewhere else, we can have a debate there over the internets. But okay, we're going to start off with commentary on Asmongold. Then we're going to get into Asmongold, and we're going to continue on into Breaking Points. And from Breaking Points, we're going to get into oh, I forgot what my plan was already. All right. But I want to begin with the War on Freedom from This Guy's Garage. So that's where we're going to begin. And then we'll get into everything else. Give me 1 second to blow my nose and drink and get some water, and we will start. Woohoo! I promise, I do love her. She's just real annoying. Yes? Are you okay now? There's another cat in this house that would love to sit on my lap while I'm doing videos. No, no. He said no. Okay. Here we go. This guy's garage.
This guy's garage.
The examples I chose were all
harms bill. I just want to know your view on this, on the freedom of expression, your concerns. You talked about 3 issues. I'll delve into those in a moment. But overall, what is your concern?
I chose 3. The examples I chose were all examples that traditionally, in terms of defending freedom of expression, you have a government statute. And then if you think the statute's limiting your rights, you can appeal to the courts for relief. The examples I gave are ones that make that more difficult.
Guessing he's a Catholic priest. I'm not really sure. I didn't put anything here, but he's dressed like a Catholic priest, although he could be an Anglican.
Because it's not a statutory act. It's a regulatory thing. It's a spending power. And the last example was actually just
maybe even a Lutheran priest,
kind of a lobby for restricting freedom of expression. Some of the other witnesses also address things that don't fall under the realm of a government statute, so professional organizations, universities, etc. So that's why I chose to highlight those things.
You're okay,
that
Frank.
seems to be
You're okay.
where more of the threats to freedom of expression come today. That's why I highlighted those.
I think the one you highlighted first was interesting. It was the Canada Summer Jobs when this government demanded faith-based organizations to sign off on the attestation. My riding of Saskatoon Grasswood, I had a number of nonprofit organizations that I truly support, and many of them couldn't sign off on the attestation. And I give them credit for it. There was, I give them credit because
I'm assuming this is either has to do with LGBTQ rights, or it's going to have to do with medical, female health care. I don't really know what the safe term is to use in the first few minutes of a stream, but I'm assuming it's either of those issues that the Catholic Church does not want to sign on to. That's what I'm guessing is going on.
their moral obligation, they had a moral obligation on this issue that, yes, they could have taken the money. Yes, they could have given Canada Summer students an opportunity, but many of them did not. And to me, I was very proud of them, to be honest with you. I dealt with them for many years. Like I said, my first one is nonprofits, and whether in my community, nonprofits are struggling right now, and they've struggled in the past. So when they said thanks, but no thanks, that spoke a lot about the organizations, if you don't mind me saying. Just comment on that, because you did mention that off the top.
I did. I would just make a distinction. The example I used was actually not a faith-based group. It would be just a generic landscaping company. Everybody was required to make that attestation in the first instance. It does touch for some on freedom of conscience and religion, as it may have for some of the faith-based groups, but it was a requirement the requirement for that program was that you had to express an opinion. It happened to be an opinion on a specific subject in agreement with the government's policy, but the very fact that you had to express an opinion to qualify is itself a violation of freedom, thought, opinion, and
I don't think he's talking about law there. I think he's talking about individual freedoms or here the right to disagree. The fact that you have to agree with what the government's doing, not just consent, is a weird requirement.
belief. So that was the problem.
And it's weird if America asked for the same thing. I just want to be very clear. It's a weird requirement and is wrong. Imagine if to accept funding for school, you had to also agree that God was real. Atheists wouldn't like that. So let's not play namby-pamby here and be all nice about it. they're trying to make the Catholic Church or Christians in general or conservatives in general to bend their will to the state's belief. That is wrong.
There, you're right. It put some groups in the position of having to make a difficult choice, and those who made a principled choice, I would share your view, required some courage to do so, but they shouldn't have to be in that position. The difficulty there was that redress against that was very difficult. Had it been a statute, you could have gone to court and maybe got an injunction right away. It's possible. I mean, we'd have to see whether that was possible. But when it becomes a attestation, part of the apparatus of the application process, redress was very difficult. Now, there were later some court initiatives, and then later there was a revision. But had it been, if the government passed a law saying that you had to make that attestation, you could have been in court the next day to seek relief and maybe have got, if the judge agreed, some kind of injunction. But this is a more nebulous requirement and therefore harder to seek redress.
I have three major hospitals in the city of Saskatoon. One is a faith-based Catholic hospital, St. Paul's. They don't believe in MAID, and they will not do that. And just your thoughts on that, because they've been run by the nuns in the past, and they're faith-based, they're Catholic hospital, a very integral part, I would say, of our city. And I give them credit also on the MAID. They spoke out right away. They did not agree with this. Just your thoughts on, and there's been some backlash in our city towards them because of their position on this. But just your thoughts on that.
Well, that would, I think, would come under the primary freedom outlined in the Charter, which is freedom of conscience and religion. Freedom of expression comes in the second part of the fundamental freedom. So I would agree that they should not be coerced against their conscience. In that case, my concern here was actually more in professional associations where what a doctor, physician, a nurse, pharmacist, whoever might even say is being policed, not because of the professional competence of that medical practitioner, but because of the view that, in this case, the professional body might take. And that power is given to them by the government. So they hold that livelihood of that professional in their hands. So that's and in fact, in a way, a professional body has more power over it than maybe the provincial government, which has more blunt instruments. But to limit your livelihood is a pretty powerful power given to regulatory professional bodies. And when you seek redress against them, it's harder because courts give them more deference.
The consistent sort of votes against conversion there plus is.
Thank you.
One of the things that has troubled me is that there has been a consistent pattern among the Conservative Party of voting against the rights of us LGBTQI plus Canadians, whether it was the consistent sort of votes against conversion therapy or running a candidate in the by-election right now in Cloverdale Langley City that has said, quote, "You can pray the gay away." These types of tropes, these types of ideas that trans people have mental health disorders, which is a quote from the Conservative Party convention in 2023. In my view, while expressions of while people are using their freedom of expression, I think have a profoundly negative impact on the LGBT community. Can you share a little bit from your work of what you have seen when politicians engage in rhetoric like that and put their names on ballots? What message that sends?
Absolutely. I have been disappointed to see the trajectory of Canada's Conservative Party in recent years. I remember, I think it was Michelle Rempel and it was Deputy Leader Melissa Lantsman, who have both been proponents of bringing the Conservative Party into the 21st century and shedding this legacy of homophobia and transphobia. And I miss those days. I remember seeing that evolution when marriage equality, when a opposition to marriage equality was removed from the Conservative Party policy book. And then I looked on with dread when at their last convention, we saw two anti-trans policies passed with overwhelming support and no Conservative members of Parliament speaking out in opposition.
I'm curious what the definition here of anti-trans policy means.
We've seen no Conservatives speak out with Premier Smith denying healthcare access to trans kids and their families, with her government literally putting itself between parents and the healthcare that their kids need. And so the impact is, folks living in fear, the reinforcement of stigma and shame, and many generations of queer and trans people grew up in schools and communities that taught us to hate ourselves. And it's only in the last decade that we've seen that shift. But now this period of backlash is recreating that environment of stigma, of
I would find it very hard to believe that the school is actually actively teaching you to hate yourself.
hostility. And,
especially considering how young you are. But I don't live in Canada, so maybe Canada was that repressive. But I live in the South, in Texas, in a very Christian, very Catholic area, very Baptist area, and we weren't doing that.
Can't stop thinking about the mom in Alberta who might have to leave her province to get her kid access to healthcare. I can't help think about the kid in Saskatchewan who's
See, the problem here is that these are all talking points. You're here to testify, and you're using talking points, and that to me is, if not dishonest, at least very political. Which is how I think a lot of this stuff gets disconnected from the audience is intended to sway. You're just turning people's ears right off.
simply wants to be themselves and is hearing a schoolyard bully parrot the language of their premier in order to mistreat and bully that child. And so I hope that the Conservative Party comes into 2024 and stops taking issue with my community who simply want to be ourselves, to contribute to society, and make Canada a country where freedom includes everybody.
You talk about freedom, and I would love your thoughts, because this is something that I have never really understood. Why are Conservatives so triggered by pronouns?
That's such a shitty question.
I wish I knew. I think, there is often this oversimplification. I'm stuck.
It would be because it's a denial of reality. That would be the answer from a conservative.
Honestly, I'm stumped on why. At the end of the day, it's basic dignity and basic respect. I like to joke. I have a trans spouse and I've screwed up their pronouns and we still got married. The world did not end. People make mistakes, but what's happening right now is they're trying to use these as wedge issues. They're trying to use these to propagate fear and to create this illusion that we're pushing an agenda. My agenda is the same agenda that gay people and trans people have been pushing forward for generations.
But let's flip it around. There was a push to change the way Hispanics speak about themselves, to be more inclusive in their language based on a study group of professors, college students, that they try to push an agenda onto the community of Hispanics, and the Hispanics resoundingly said no. So, regardless of whether or not you personally agree with that push, you're trying to change the language the same way for Hispanic people, the same way now for the majority of the English-speaking culture. And the majority of the English-speaking culture is also saying no. That's why it's not a natural linguistic change. Natural linguistic changes and evolutions happen all the time. There's a term right now that's fucking driving me nuts because I'm an old fucking man, crashing out. It's not a fucking term. I don't care. I don't care how much you want to say it is. It's not a term. I don't like it. Throw it away. But it's natural. This is something that people are actively saying and actively using. It is a natural linguistic evolution. We've had a ton of words like that come into the language, phrases that change the meaning of other phrases, and also new words. And new words come in all the time, and they come in naturally. The problem is, a lot of these changes, whether you want to say cis, whether you want to say two-spirit, whatever, they're coming from academia, and they're coming from the top down. That is not a natural linguistic change. When it comes from the bottom up and it invades the society, the change is instantaneous. One day it's not a word, and the next day it's a word that everybody uses. And if you don't know the word or know the term, you're completely out of touch because now you can't understand how people are talking to each other. That's why people have a problem with the pronoun stuff, is because it's an artificial change, and it's aimed at the larger group that doesn't want to have that change. That's why. Same thing with the Latinx thing. We didn't like it, so we didn't do it. The majority of English speakers don't like it, so they're not doing it. It's not an anti-trans thing. It's a we don't want to do it thing.
That is one where society stops discriminating against us, where we stop experiencing socioeconomic disadvantage. There's nothing radical about that.
Everybody experiences social economic disadvantage. You have to go to a socialist country to get out of that. And even there, you'll probably be socially, economically disadvantaged. Believe me, I've been to other countries. It's not better. Doesn't matter.
That agenda. There is simply the idea of extending this dream of what Canada can be to include a new group of Canadians.
Well, I mean, I would argue that it isn't a question of new or old. I mean, I think if we're all equal and we all have the right to be who we are, some people have the right to be ignorant. Some people have the right to do whatever they.
I don't think we all have the right to be who we are. Let me give you an instance. If someone's a mass murderer, they don't have the right to go murdering people, even if it's their natural inclination. So no, that is not a good example, and that is a it is a stupid expression that is overgeneral. And when people say stuff like that, it's really dumb. Just be yourself. But what if yourself is a monster? Oh, we'll accept you for who you are. But what if yourself is a criminal? So no, don't just be yourself. Be someone better. Have a goal.
They feel. I guess the question at the end of the day, and I know that there are some really good people on this.
People can better themselves. And I said this a long time ago to a client of mine back when I was a personal trainer who thought because he was gay that meant that he had to be weak. And I told him, I know a lot of strong gay men who you wouldn't know they're gay. You wouldn't know what their sexuality is. But they hold their shit together. They work hard. They care for their family. And they're physically strong. There is nothing about being gay that says you have to be a victim. And there's nothing about being gay that says that you have to be weak. That is your perception of what you think a gay person is. That is not the perception of what a gay person is. Remember, I'm speaking to a gay man when I said this to him. And it blew his mind. So, being gay or being trans doesn't mean that you're on the lowest rung of society. And it doesn't mean you have to stay there if you started there. So, I don't agree with this guy at all. I think there's going to be a trans president one day. I think there's going to be more and more trans people in our politics. There's already more and more gay and lesbian politicians, and it will continue to grow like that because people will become more accepting and more tolerant the more exposure they have to people who have different views than them and different identities. People have the right and have the need to better themselves. So this guy is wrong.
Committee and I from all parties and I do enjoy serving with them. What would you say to them? What would you say to them as an opportunity to go back to their party leadership and members of their party who have increasingly taken positions that are certainly anti-trans? And it's an easy community to bully, right? It's a small community, and you've historically been part of a community that's not had the same protections.
Okay, so let's talk about biological initiative here. I'm dyslexic. I was born with that condition. People call me slow. People call me dumb. People call me lazy because it takes longer for me sometimes to process stuff. But in high school, I took an IQ test, and I had one of the highest IQs in my school, according to my teacher, according to the results at the time. What they told me was I had the highest IQ of my class. I didn't have the best grades. I had some of the worst grades, actually. But my IQ was really high. So your perception of reality isn't actually reality. Actuality trumps perception. Actuality trumps theory. Actuality, reality, trumps fiction.
And freedoms afforded to you. What would you say to them? What would you say to them on behalf of kids, on behalf of adults, on behalf of members of the trans community who just want to be left alone?
I would say speak with us and don't speak over us. I would say listen to the voices of trans.
I think the problem here with this particular person is that this person is an activist, and I think she's going to identify as an activist in a second, judging by the way she's talking. So that to me would be the problem. I'm assuming she. I don't know if they identify as they, but I'm assuming she identifies as she.
Trans people and understand what's at stake. There are many conservatives who I think are reticent around this direction for the party, and I think that many don't understand what's really going on here. There is a powerful anti-LGBT lobby. It's tied into a powerful anti-choice lobby, and they're trying to use trans people as a scapegoat to mess with access to reproductive health care.
So here's the problem: is that I kind of feel like that's code to say that the anti-LGBT lobby is a pro-Christian lobby. I kind of feel that's what she's saying.
legitimize government putting itself between, again, young people or families or everyday Canadians and healthcare that social conservatives simply disagree.
And again, way too many talking points here. I think it would have been much better. I'm not Canadian. This opinion is strictly from a Texan. To have had an average, everyday, non-activist person who happens to be trans to speak on this, to speak on these issues instead of an activist. Because an activist already has their talking points, already has a drum that they want to beat. And that's not always the way to find out the best perspective.
Agree with. They're using trans people and anti-trans rhetoric to normalize overriding the Charter protected rights of Canadians. That includes, yes, queer and trans people. That also includes workers. That includes racialized Canadians and people of various faiths.
What is racialized Canadians?
And so I hope that folks understand what is at stake.
I'm assuming by various faiths, she's going to mean Islam and I guess neo-paganism, because Wiccanism has kind of died off.
Here, because yes, it's my community's equality and rights. But if you allow one community to be stomped on in an environment polluted by hate speech, it takes away the rights of
Also, I'm pretty sure your definition of hate speech and my definition of hate speech is very different.
everybody.
And in the last minute that I have left, or short less than the minute that I have left, I would like to go back to Ms. Al-Azam. You've just heard...
Mr. Nur Mohammed, you do not have a minute left. You.
I wanted to get right into the fact that
This guy's garage edited very... if anybody knows how to get these... Because I'm interested in this. I'm interested in what's going on with the Russian stuff and with the rights in both the UK and in... I was say British Columbia and in Canada. If you guys know what channel to go to, because I've looked up Canadian news on YouTube and I can't find it. If you guys know what channel to go to get these feeds raw, let me know, because I want to keep covering this. And I don't want to keep going to this guy's garage for it, because this guy's doing his own edits and own updates, and I don't want to take anything away from him. If you're watching this, go watch it. Go watch the whole thing without my commentary. Get him the views that he needs. But please, if you guys know of a place that I can watch this without his logo and without his edits, so I can just watch it raw with you all, let me know.
this conversation about freedom of expression and the protection of it, I think that we need to be very careful about the legal limits to the freedom of expression and that it doesn't devolve into hate speech. Now, Ms.
I don't give a fuck about hate speech. I really don't.
Johnson, you were very specific in terms of, and very clear in terms of what's occurred, what you've seen, the dangers that have existed for you because you have, because of who you are and how you identify, but the dangers that have evolved because of a great deal of extremism and hate speech coming forward. Ms. Al-Azam, you have been an incredible spokesperson in our community after the terrorist attack.
The amount of wetback jokes I've heard in my lifetime. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all. Every time I get told you speak really good English for Mexican, I'm like, cool, awesome, I'm fine with that.
That happened to our London family, and I know that has come at a great consequence in many cases as well because of that.
To channel that anger and to take advantage of that anger to gain power. I think in Canada right now we're.
So I want to be very clear. This person's an activist, so fine, they have a bias. I'm not sure, like, if you saw earlier, I did watch some of this beforehand, not all of it. I think this person is the one that's going to be the most dishonest on their presentation. I'm not sure, but I think that whoever we're coming up to is going to be the one that's really, really bad faith.
We're seeing this language around, so-called parental rights.
Because I want to be clear, even though I disagree with this person, I don't think she's acting in bad faith. I think she really does want these rights. The next person, on the other hand, I think is speaking in bad faith, if I'm remembering correctly. Like I said, I skipped through the video last time I checked it out.
Reference to gender ideology. And so we're using these as a distraction. Instead of delivering on healthy schools and happy kids, happy families, we are...
I hate the talking points. I hate the catchphrases, man. That just turns me off. Like, if you're a politician and you're doing this, just know I'm not voting for you. So if you're trying to get the average working person or the weirdo religious person, you're not going to get them using catchphrases and talking points. That just doesn't work. Most people want to vote for the person they can have a beer with. Just straight up. They want to be able to have a beer and have a conversation with someone, and they want to relate to the person. You're not going to relate to someone by using talking points. This is college speak. This is academic speech, scholarly speak. It doesn't work. It does not work. This is how the Democrats lost here in the United States. You're just continually distancing yourself from the average voting individual.
Some and create a false equivalence. This is not about parents versus kids. This is about creating a school environment where all kids have the freedom to be.
I'm not trying to be catty. I'm just trying to figure out if that's a wig or if that's like plugs. I promise I'm not trying to be catty. I'm just really curious.
Be themselves are treated with dignity and raised in healthy communities. But when we see politicians engaging with this divisive rhetoric, it cues to that playground bully that they can do the same. It encourages people to walk up to and sometimes cross that line. And I think
There's a move in the right to bring back bullying, which I think is very funny. I know a lot of people are offended by it. I don't really care. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's completely destructive. And I think it'll hurt your cause if you start arguing in favor of bullying. But yeah, that is a movement on the right currently. Fringe right, but still on the right.
we've seen that across Canada with the rise of anti-2SLGI plus hate. In particular,
What? Anti-TWSL plus hate. Hi. You're good.
the use and the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause gives me great concern. I think.
Oh, I tried to get one of my trans friends to come on to this show to talk against this, but she did not want to. So.
In Saskatchewan, prior to allowing a court to review and to look at the policies of Premier Moe, we saw this.
This was like maybe a month or so ago, or 2 months ago, and basically she has a pretty good position, high position in a corporate company, and so she doesn't want to put her face out there involving any activism going one way or the other on these issues. So I get it, but I still would like to have a trans voice on here at some point. It took me a long time to get LGBT activists onto my channel. It's way too long, to be honest with you. I think it's going to take even longer for me to get trans people to come on here and speak their opinion, which I wish, they would, but yeah.
Clause used, and it actually means that one of the few checks and balances on government is now overridden, and it creates an environment where, again, we're not able to have the conversations that are nuanced, that do require expert input.
I don't know how it is in Canada, but at least in the United States, it is the community, the activist community that's pretending to speak for your community that is making it hard. And not just your community, but like all communities, like somehow all Hispanics, all black people, that is making it hard for people to have conversations with each other. That they don't want to, quote unquote, platform people who disagree with them. And we just heard this on one of these testimonies just a few days ago with Lauren Southern, where one of your representatives was saying, how dare you go interview one of Russia's top intellectuals who has influence on Putin. Of course you do that. So the fact that this anti-intellectualism, anti-inquisitiveness is out there, this deplatforming idea is out there, you're almost speaking out of both sides of your mouth. So unless you are saying that that is wrong and that you should have someone who is anti-LGBT present to represent their points of view, unless you're saying that, which you're not, then you can't make the argument that you need to hear all the nuanced points of view and all the opposing sides if you're saying that one point of view can't be part of the conversation, even if you vehemently disagree with that point of view. Even if I vehemently disagree with that point of view, it doesn't matter. They deserve to be heard just as much as you do. And their voice shouldn't be silenced or their volume shouldn't be lowered just because you find their speech abhorrent.
On the best interest of kids and the best interest of families, it becomes a whack-a-mole or a sledgehammer using a slogan to ram through legislation and policy.
There's a policy that you guys, oh my goodness, don't say that. There's literally There's literally a there's literally a terrible slogan that's attached with this movement that shouldn't be used. That statistically is a false statement. So seriously, this is not a good argument. These are talking points. These are not good arguments.
That restrict the freedom of trans kids and their families. I think every day about the kid who isn't fortunate enough to be safe at home, who has their one space where they're able to be themselves, their school, taken away by a government that is pretending to be invested in the well-being of families, but is actually queuing their support to an anti-LGBTQ lobby that wants to take my rights away and force my community back into the closet. Thank you.
I don't think anybody wants you to go back into the closet. Maybe you can find some religious extremists that do, but the majority of the centrists and moderates don't care. It's not that they want you to go anywhere. They just don't care.
Thank you very much for the question. And the question is on impact, so I'll answer it in two parts. First, the impact of the law of Bill 21, and then the impact of the...
I think this is the person that speaks in bad faith. Like I said, I'm not sure. It might be someone else later on.
Notwithstanding clause. So just to give us context about what we're talking about, we have a law that says that Muslims, Jews, and Sikhs who wear religious symbols cannot become teachers in Quebec, right? That's the law. So the impact of this was explained both in court and in a study that followed our court appearance, right? So a report found that 1 in 5 Muslim women in Quebec have experienced physical threats or aggression at work, and 54% of Quebec Muslim women have heard racist or prejudicial remarks about their religious...
Well, you're going to hear racist and prejudicial remarks. That's not... Who cares? The threats of violence, that's a problem. And the fact that they can't wear the religious identifiers or signifiers to work is a problem. You should absolutely be allowed to wear a cross. You should absolutely be allowed to wear a Muslim symbol, Hindu symbol. You should be allowed to wear a hijab if you want to. I'm not fully convinced about the wearing an entire outfit that covers everything, but we are allowing masks now because of the whole COVID thing. So yeah, no, that is wrong. It is wrong to not let people express themselves religiously, but I don't think that's going to help the trans issue. I think that's a separate issue, but has to do with limiting of freedom of speech in Canada and the UK.
Identity from their colleagues at work as compared to 9% of the general population. When we were in court, the court heard from many witnesses as to the harms they endured. Women teacher candidates, most of them Muslim, lost their jobs and vocations. An aspiring Crown prosecutor had their plans derailed. I know of people on personal levels who have been impacted by the bill. Individuals expressed concern about their financial security, fears for the future of their children, and many Muslim women described increasing incidents of verbal and physical harassment against them in public spaces. One woman, overcome with emotion, simply wept on the stand as she described how it felt to be excluded from a society that she had once been seen as a model of acceptance. So that's when we're talking about impact of Bill 21. When we talk about the impact of the notwithstanding clause, I mean, it's clear in just looking at how readily other...
Maybe this isn't the one this isn't the person who speaks who is bad faith. Someone in this panel was bad faith. I can't remember who.
Provinces are now to either use or threaten the use of...
Or maybe she's going to take a turn or a twist in a second.
...clause to pass populist legislation. Wielding this power in this way...
Okay, here we go. Yeah. Okay. Here it comes.
Ends the very fabric of our rights, reducing them from inalienable fundamental human rights.
No. That's not what a democracy is. Democracy is majority rule. If the majority of people vote for something, in a democracy, the majority wins. Doesn't matter if the majority is right. Has nothing to do with whether or not the majority is right. In a democracy, the majority always wins. So you have to convince the majority that your argument is correct. And if your argument is not convincing, that is not a problem of the majority, that is a problem with your argument.
To mere permissions that are granted and taken away at whims. So that's kind of impact. I'll leave it at that.
America. Malcolm X versus... I was going to say Rodney, versus Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. had the better argument. His argument won overall. It's the argument that won, not the actions that Martin Luther King and his cohorts and those who tried to influence him took. Yes, they are the more dramatic, they are the more flamboyant, they are the more interesting aspects. of the movement. But there had been a long, long movement of trying to get minorities, specifically African Americans' rights in the United States for a very long time, and in other countries as well. I don't know the stories in the other countries. I don't know why Canada changed. I don't know why the UK changed. But in America, the reason why there was change was Martin Luther King Jr., because his argument, his religious argument for the rights of all people, won over the minds and hearts of society. His argument, not the actions of those who supported the larger movement, which was more violent and more intense. That doesn't mean that it wasn't righteous. I want to be clear. When I say violent, I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm a martial artist. I do not abhor violence. I'm not someone who thinks violence is always wrong. But it was not the violence that won. It was the argument. It was the peacefulness. It was the peaceful protest that won over people. And a large part of that was due to television and people being able to see the injustice before their face. So now they couldn't deny it. And they were shamed into understanding that, oh, hey, my faith teaches this, and we're of the same faith. There is no black or white in this religion. There is no Jew or Gentile. And yet I'm seeing what the rhetoric actually leads to, and I don't agree with that. It wasn't being shamed by Martin Luther King Jr. It was being called to higher principles and them shaming themselves, being like, hey, I'm not living up to my principles by supporting this. This is wrong. We got to go stop it. That's how laws change. So while I do agree that what you're describing is wrong, part of that is your own institution's laws against religious freedom. And part of it is a society that is rejecting all progressivism because of how far the extremes of progressivism are pushing. So you have two different problems that you're combating, and bad faith is not the answer. You need to convince the populace, you need to convince the majority that yours is the righteous cause.
Okay. There's been a lot of work done on anti-Palestinian racism.
Palestine suppression.
Talk about Palestinian suppression as well as a...
Absolutely. Yeah, I thank you for the question. So this committee has heard many people in other sessions as well, such as, for example, Dr. Yapangi, for example, providing firsthand accounts of some of what we call this Palestine suppression. And for my role at NCC, I'm hearing from Muslim Canadians and other Canadians across the country. I've seen instances about regarding Palestine suppression from disproportionate police response at protests, including physical force against pregnant women who were doing nothing more than peacefully participating in a protest, as is their right, to censorship of Palestinian content online, whether that's being shadow banned or other forms of online suppression, to such egregious suppression as folks who have lost their jobs, as you made reference to, and their livelihoods for either being Palestinian, speaking in support of Palestine, or I've seen some cases literally of just quoting scripture or speaking in Arabic, and they have lost their jobs as a result. These are real cases.
I would have to know way more about that to have an opinion on it, so I'm going to fast forward.
Because online is almost everybody can say anything that they want, and there's very little restriction on it, although there's some concerns.
Free and democratic to be good. Thank you for your testimony. I know thank you very much, Madam Chair. Father D'Souza, thank you for your testimony. I know you've written extensively across a whole host of different topics, and I'd ask your input, if you could, about how, as Canadians, we ensure that the public sphere in this country is one where we can have robust dialogue, have debates and discussions, and be able to use the old expression. Sometimes
get rid of your hate speech laws. Get rid of punishment for expression, and only punish people for actions or for calls to violence. That's how. Allow absolute free speech as far as is reasonable without leading into chaos or anarchy. And that includes letting people who want to have anarchy speak.
Just agree to disagree, as I would suggest, is one of the foundational elements of what a free and democratic society should look like. Could you comment on that?
Well, there are parts of our common culture where that's not unusual. So our newspapers, our airwaves, and it's been mentioned by other speakers, online is almost everybody can say anything that they want, and there's very little restriction on it, although there's...
That is a lie. There is a ton of restriction. A lot of these companies are proactively, as a result of Trump's first election. I want to be very clear. It does come from a reaction to Trump. The governments of the world panicked, especially the liberal governments, especially the progressive and democratic governments. That means democratic as in those that are against republicanism, not democratic as in one man, one vote. I'm talking about the political apparatus of democracy here. These movements panicked and didn't want to have another Trump presidency. So they thought by suppressing free speech and putting pressure on media outlets here, social media and new media outlets, to change their rules and to change their algorithms, to suppress the populist shows, and instead to have only official or better regulated or more well-regulated news sources and media sources, that somehow that would prevent Trump from ever being president again. That is what happened. That is not a false idea. That's not like a conspiracy thing. They were scared shitless that Trump won, and they wanted to make sure that could never happen again, because the rhetoric surrounding Trump is so high and so insane that they thought he was literally the next coming of Stalin. So they went for it, and it didn't work. Trump is now president again. And in every country where they tried to go super progressive and super censorial, they ended up getting conservative candidates into office in Mexico, in Spain, in Italy, now in the United States. And yes, it is coming to Canada. More than likely, based on what's happened so far in other countries, you will have a new conservative government in Canada eventually. Not just because of time, because of the amount of pressure you're putting on people to submit their will to ideas they don't agree with. And also, global inflation doesn't help. So, this is a response to Trump for some reason. But these responses to Trump were only allowed because George Bush set up laws that gave the government more control over media. Again, these restrictions had been taken off of media, especially in the 90s. But these restrictions were on media in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s as a response to things like the Satanic Panic and the comic book scare and all that kind of stuff. So you have these comic codes, these television codes, the MMP, all that kind of stuff happen as a result of the last Red Scare. Well, now you have an orange scare, and this orange scare leads to the reprisal, to the reviviation of these censorship, these censorious tendencies. And this is the pendulum swinging back the other way. Only now, for some insane reason, things have inverted, and it's the right that wants more liberal language and more liberal, liberal meaning free, more liberal forms of expression. It's insane. So what has happened is completely insane, and it is a result of Trump. But these actions could only happen because Bush Jr. Took away so many restrictions, and so it's not a game of because Kamala was a bad candidate and because Biden is the worst president of all time, that's why we're where we're at. No. Because wokeism came into effect and society had a major revolutionary shift due mostly from academic influence. No. COVID changed society because of the lockdown. No. Because Trump won the presidency. No. Because Obama used more executive orders than any other president. No. Because Bush let loose the reins of censorship and government power. No. it's not just one of these things. It's all of them. And the line goes back much further than Bush. Okay, so these are domino effects that take centuries to happen. The influence of socialism and Marxism didn't start 5 years ago or 10 years ago with Lacey Green and Chris Reagan. It started with, it started in the 40s and 50s and 60s. Like, it takes years for these kind of social experiments to see fruit and see if it's bad or good, for these influence campaigns to take effect. It takes years, not days. So, and it takes decades. So, the presentation here is a little false. Everything that has happened up till now had to happen for us to get to where we're at. It's not just one thing.
Some concerns that have been raised in some legislation. But there are areas of our common culture, a common life, where that is shrinking. We've had two professors talk about the environment on campus. There is the professional bodies that I spoke about. There are other places where the freedom to speak out is under pressure or even restricted. So you have to figure out which part of the culture you're looking at. I mean, I'm a newspaper columnist. There's no problem. I write whatever I want. I don't have any obstacle to that. But there are places and professionals.
Really? Try writing a 2-page article that's just you saying the word fuck. Go for it. Or say something bad about a racial group. You're not as free as you think you are, so don't say that bullshit line. That was bullshit. You're trying to kiss up to the people who you're trying to convince. Don't do that.
In our country, professors, university professors in some circumstances, medical professionals and so forth, where there's a problem. And then there's this other issue of, do people feel kind of chilled or under pressure, which, depending on the issue, can be more of a cultural thing that doesn't have a legal expression. So,
well, yeah, but that is the type of censorship we're facing now. We're not facing legal censorship currently, although in some parts of Canada, some parts of Canadian law and in UK law, you are. But at least here in the United States and probably in Australia, it's not about just the legal, it's about the social. So we're having social pressure, and we're having this kind of fascistic corporate power where corporation is now censoring our speech. I've had to do it. To have a YouTube channel, I've had to censor my speech. So, yes, censorship is real, and it's not just limited to the government. It's also powerfully expressed through corporations which have power. Corporations now have power equivalent to governments. So, Raymond, you are out of touch. You're living in a time where your version of the necessities of protections of freedoms no longer limited to the state. The state is not the only one who can repress our freedoms now. We have given corporations personhood. Understand.
Are there concerns? I think there are concerns, but they're not widespread. We don't have to worry about freedom of the press disappearing in Canada, but there are
is that bullshit?
Places, important places in our common life together, especially professional places where it's under restriction.
Thank you for that. Now, as a man of cloth, you're walking this line. Your faith is a big part of your public life and the opinions.
When he gets over this, when he gets done answering this, we'll skip to the next video.
That you share in that regard. So I'm wondering if, and you mentioned the prioritization in the Charter about freedom of religion and conscience and then freedom of expression. I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit on how key it is to ensure, in this case, lawmakers sitting around this table, but the larger context for Canadians that might be engaged in this subject to ensure that
we're going to go from here to here.
In Canada, it not be lost in the need
from
to
there,
take into account that freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, and how that impacts freedom of expression.
Wherever they are.
Well, thank you. Well, there's a list in the charter. They could have written it any different way. That's how they chose to write it. Is that the first freedom there is conscience and religion, as Professor LeBlanc mentioned. The conscience and religion
And then
actually
from
is
there
where
we'll finish
those
off with
ideas
this one.
often form that then are expressed in thought, religion, belief, etc. So, if you don't protect the inner sanctuary of the person, then it's very hard to protect the outer expression of the person. That's why.
Protecting someone, protecting an individual from ideas that they don't like is not protection. It's just not.
It's not accidental that it's there first. They're not optional, and there is a hierarchy. I mean, they're all fundamental freedoms, but there's a reason that was chosen. And when we come to our public life together, people of faith should not feel that somehow, because their views on a particular public issue are formed in their faith, they're somehow secondary, or they're somehow less worthy of contribution, as if a secular idea somehow has greater validity because of its origin. So that's not usually a legal problem, but it is often the case, even in our public debates, that that arguments that proceed from conscience.
Also, there's another apparent contradiction here. When these ideas were first written down, whether these ideas come out of theology and dogma with examining the apparent contradictions and the paradoxes and all that kind of stuff, or whether it's when it was written down in the Bible, these ideas, when they were wrestled with at that time, were being wrestled with in the exact same way. I'm not talking about the internet, I'm talking about between people. So these social constructs and social ideas and prescriptions to handle these social situations were being faced by the people who wrote about it. And this is their solution to that problem. Again, whether it's explicit in the text or whether it's dogma that comes out of the text, these people were dealing with these issues. That's why they wrote what they wrote. Now, we can get into how much is historical, how much of this is them projecting back, how much of this is idealism, whatever. They were thinking about this problem, and this was their solution. And what Christians are saying is that this solution is the best solution. So that does not divorce their ideas from reality. It is not as if, because of inspiration, because it's divine command, that somehow the people who wrote it weren't real living people. Whoever wrote it was real and living, regardless of what their name was, regardless of where they were actually living. The people who physically told the story first, the people who physically wrote down the story, the people who developed the story, all these are real people living in the real world, regardless of whether or not it's several thousand years ago or a few hundred years ago. When we read philosophy from the first century, when we read philosophy from the BCs, when we read philosophy, political philosophy from the French Revolution, we don't go, oh, that's 500 years ago, it doesn't matter. That's 1,000 years ago, it doesn't matter. That's 100 years ago, it doesn't matter. That's 10 years ago, it doesn't matter. No, it all matters. It might not all be relevant, but it all matters. And they're all dealing with other people. That's why they have the opinions that they have. So the Christian idea is that the Christian solutions are the best solutions. That's why we're arguing for them. And whatever your point of view is, you're arguing also that your ideas are the best. And it's through the competition of ideas that we get better solutions, hopefully.
Conscience and religion are sometimes treated as second-class arguments.
I appreciate that. And just one last quick question. I think I have about 30 seconds. Is that right? There are some that would suggest that specifically when it comes to discussions surrounding faith, and I hear this from pastors and priests and other faith leaders, that they're worried that there are some within our society that would say you're free to say what you want within your church, but don't take it outside the doors of that church. Is that an express? Is that what the charter means?
That's not freedom of speech.
means, because that would be like saying you're free to think what you want in your classroom or in your barber shop or in your bar or tavern or in your house, but you can't bring that into public life. People don't say that. So there shouldn't be sort of a special category that says if that's what you think in your temple or church or mosque, that's not allowed. That's not what freedom of religion or conscience. That's not what freedom of expression means.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good there. Let's move on to some assmen of gold. First, let's go with the coverage of him, and then we'll go to his actual video.
With these people anymore, unfortunately.
Things that have been much more conservative, much more traditional than what I think a lot of people would, expect or maybe have you believe. And so I want...
And unknowing, I have absolutely no idea what this is about. I see he's got some beepus in the background here. He's got some beepus. The bep. I don't like the schoolgirl baby looking ones. I don't know what that means. That's a sick sweater. It reminds me of those like old blankets that you would get at like farmers markets that were super fucking warm. The silly fox who sit you straight. What? What does he mean by this? To do. It's like, oh, I don't like that this person uses language that I think is reprehensible. So instead of trying to ruin them financially and socially, I'm just going to ignore their existence. All right? Like I would love to go back to that world.
Me too.
And I think that you're seeing a lot of backlash against, what were considered to be like, protected types of thinking and protected groups of people. You're seeing a tremendous amount of backlash against it.
There are a lot of people
trying to legalize opinions and to criminalize certain opinions, legislate opinions is insane and Orwellian, and I think absolutely terrible. I think it's the wrong way to go. Convince people with your arguments. That's all I've been doing here for 11 years, is trying to convince people that I'm right. And based on my audience share, based on my viewer count, based on my subscription count, I'm not that great at it. And I have to deal with that. I have to deal with that every fucking day that I come on here. Hey, my argument's not the best argument today. And when my argument is the best argument, I see my views skyrocket. I have videos that do amazing, and then I have videos that do shit. And that's the price of being in the public and expressing your opinion publicly. That's not anyone hating on me. It's not someone having something against me. Is that they don't always buy into what I'm saying. And that's okay. Having degrees and having accreditation doesn't make you more right than anyone else. Once your idea is out in the world and in the wild, it has to survive and thrive and conquer just like any other idea. And if it can't, it won't. That's just all there is to it. So you just got to keep beating that drum. And if they don't like your idea, they're not going to listen to you. So I think she's correct. I would love to go back to a world where the consequence of having a bad opinion isn't losing your job, but is simply having a bad opinion and people not caring what you're saying.
No pun intended, went mask off in how they wanted those that disagreed with them not only like punished socially, but punished financially and having like a permanent black mark on them for dissenting against like getting the COVID vaccines or wearing masks. And these people, once it came out that like, oh, COVID actually was from a lab. COVID actually wasn't as bad as we thought it was. Actually, here's all these bad side effects from the vaccines happening, and they came out with all these articles. Where
I just want to be clear: what she's saying doesn't discount the fact that it was bad, that there was a lockdown, that people did die. So I know that the people who are very happy that we're out of that situation are over enthusiastic, but while we were in this situation, that was not the case, and that was not what the evidence was showing. Regardless of if we're right or wrong, at the time, that was not what the consensus was or what the evidence was. So a lot of this is conjecture and internal thought that we had that ended up being correct, but that's more luck and internal reasoning than evidence base.
Where it's like, oh, now is the time for unity and forgiveness. And it's like, no, man, I'm not going to forget how you wished me dead. I'm not going to forgive the fact that you wanted me.
And this is how the Democrats lost the election. They were wishing people dead. They were wishing people to be in internment camps for not agreeing with them politically. This is part of the reason why the Democrats lost, and they will continue to lose if they continue with this rhetoric. So while they're accusing the right of using this rhetoric, and while there are some extremists, like the F dude, who I don't like, who calls himself a Catholic, but he is not in any meaningful way. Outside of being baptized in the church, he has no political beliefs that are consistent with Catholic teaching. While he's not intellectually a Catholic, he might be functionally a Catholic, or nominally or in name only a Catholic, or baptism only a Catholic. He is an evil dude who is promoting evil shit. So I just want to be very clear that there's nuances here that both sides are ignoring to try to celebrate their victory over the other. And this is how people lose elections. This is how people lose rights.
Me to miss out on family members in their final moments. I'm not going to forget that you wanted me destitute, out of a job, out of actual health care. I'm not going to forget the absolute vile vitriol that was being spewed from these people. They do not deserve forgiveness. And that might come across as harsh, but it's like, if you're going to spend years...
I disagree with her, by the way. I think they do deserve forgiveness. But it has to come from us. It can't come from... It has to come from the person who is wrong. It can't come from themselves, obviously.
Invent their own way to order things. And I think that the way that they did that was they replaced religion with
fired for teaching critical thinking. One of his exercises was one of his students was talking about how J.K. Rowling was transphobic. And he was like, okay, well, tell me why J.K. Rowling is transphobic. Explain it to me. And when the student went through the different things that J.K. Rowling said, the student came ultimately to the conclusion that J.K. Rowling is not transphobic. That they believed in a narrative that had been crafted because...
You know what? I was going to include that video on today's playlist and I forgot to, so I think I'm going to jump to that one before I jump to Asmongold's.
People wanted J.K. Rowling to be othered, to be thrown out of the party because she did not adhere to the full cult dogma anymore. True. And it is going to be wild, right? I've talked about Jazz Jennings many times on my channel because it is an absolute tragic fucking story that we have the most documentation on because of the TV show. And it's going to be a very sobering moment once enough people notice Jazz Jennings' TV show and actually start saying, hey, this was vile child abuse of the highest order, and all of us just watched it. We all just watched it happen, and no one did anything because...
people just don't want to hear what they're saying, and they don't agree with it. It's actually just that simple.
Only stupid kids will accept this crap. If you've been indoctrinated, if you don't know any better, if this is what your life was, right? Like Asmon is saying, these kids, they got fed this worldview online, and they go out and they don't know how to function in real life anymore. You can't exactly call that stupid, right? Because it's not that they're not retarded, right? Like they're not actually low in.
And there went my monetization for this one.
Melody, who does like
I'm never gonna get monetized. I'm never gonna get a video that makes money.
To go there. I don't care what they believe in. I don't care what Fudakuchi Mana, I don't know how to pronounce her name. She's like a communist VTuber. She should be able to go if she wanted to. Fucking Melody, who does like chatterbait stuff, she should be able to go, right? That's like any of these people with any of their beliefs should be able to go. They only allow the politics they like, and they gave you the boot because they don't like your politics, even when you were not going to talk about politics at all. Yeah, absolutely. And I had to ban like a handful of people from my streams because I was just like, hey, everyone posts that at me as like some sort of gotcha that I'm a racist, and it's just like, what? It doesn't make me racist if I think it's okay that Killresu said the N-word while singing a rap song. It's literally in the song. It doesn't matter if she said it in that context. It shouldn't. Cross-training, right? And it's just like, people don't have that mentality. They're just like, you give me more money or I'm not going to do a good job. And I don't understand that.
And I think that's exactly what's happened. I think that a lot of people are just tired of having their opinions dictated to.
What happened with Silvervale and Pekingese was disgusting. I actually sent like a message to Silver because I felt like I needed to like thank her, I guess, because I am an anxiety-ridden woman. So standing up for myself has always been really fucking difficult. And so between like watching how she handled herself with the...
Now, mind you, I already did this video. I've already commented on this Lawrence Southern video, but I just want to hear his take on it. I've already heard his take. I'm just sharing it with you all. And I'm going to comment over him, obviously.
Everyone in this room who has an agenda in such a hyper-articulate manner, she is a force to be reckoned with.
How do you respond to allegations that your online content has been used to further Russian propaganda or influence Canadian public opinion?
How is anyone in this committee supposed to stop disinformation abroad if they can't stop it within this committee? Why wasn't
That was actually a very strong point. That was her best point in the whole thing.
Ben Scott, why wasn't he challenged when he cited false numbers about Tenet's views? Why wasn't he challenged when it was said that Tenet created the top podcast in the world.
I'm glad this is out there so that people can see that this is happening.
You might think it's insane, though, to head over to Russia, speak with a neo-fascist Alexander Dugin, and then praise the guy.
Sorry, Mr. Erskine-Smith.
You might
And the fact that this particular guy didn't let her respond to that was a terrible injustice.
think that's a level of insanity.
Mr. Erskine-Smith, sorry. No, the time is up.
You might think it's crazy that you would go to Russia, interview Alexander Dugin, and praise him. All right, my time's up, and look at how it's handled here.
All right, no, the time is up. We're actually over a little bit.
We get to answer the question.
So hopefully another witness, another member, sorry, can give you time to answer the question, but we're actually already over the time.
Point of order, Mr.
Madam,
Chair. Point of order. I think it's fair to allow the witness to answer the question.
So I'm going to move on to
The
Madam
face that he made just shows that he's dishonest.
Michaud, and then Mr. Johns.
Point of order also.
If you'd like, you can give her time to answer that question from your time.
Point of order.
Someone else on the committee tries to point that out and say, look.
Yeah, Mr. Shipley.
We've been sitting in this committee for many months, many years now, and prior to you taking over that chair, that was always the policy. If there was a question asked that the witness did have a chance to answer, that was always the policy.
But we're not going to stop and let her respond to the grenade that was just thrown through the door.
So I actually tried to stop Mr. Erskine-Smith from asking the question. I spoke while he was speaking.
Of some insane things, and I think.
So again, if members feel differently, then they can give the witness time to answer from their own time.
You've spent more time debating this than it would have taken her to be able to respond and address that.
So, Chair, do I have any more? How much time do I have left?
You still have 2 minutes left, actually.
Well, you actually answered a lot of my questions on this already, Ms. Southern, so I'll have to regroup and pass it on to the next speaker.
Thanks, Ms. Southern. I'm going to be speaking for.
And Smith, I think, is going to make the same observation I made, which is I don't think she actually only speaks French. So I think she did this purposely, which is just shitty. It's just showmanship.
So I hope that you can hear me, that you can hear the interpretation.
What's the likelihood that this member of parliament does not actually speak English? So the question then is, why did she choose to speak French and require her to use a translation earpiece? Is it tactical? I don't know for sure.
I
think it was.
really haven't had the opportunity to
It was
look
most
at
definitely a tactic.
your videos.
Really? You have someone appearing before parliament for making YouTube videos, and you have not even taken the time to look at any
I made the same point.
of their YouTube videos?
Did you make videos about the Canadian policies?
By the way, stunning. Just beautiful, but still totally unfair.
About
And not
politics
cool.
here in this country, about the stance in Ukraine.
Who cares? Why would you ask that?
And I'm going to be fair, not beautiful, not handsome. I know there's probably some people out there that think he is handsome. I don't think he is handsome. I don't think so. I know currently I'm chubby faced. I get it. I'm not the handsomest guy either, but I don't. At my best, I think I'm an 8 when I'm like in really great shape. And obviously I'm never going to have hair again. But, at my best, I think I'm an 8, maybe an 8.5 if I really push it. I think he's a 6. That's what I'm saying. Warren Smith is a 6. I'm an 8. He's a 6. That's what I'm saying. You can quote me on that. You can put that in the record books. It's true.
Question. So what?
I just wanted to take 2 seconds to respond to the allegations that I.
She's a fucking 10. Her mental, what she thinks, what she says, 4, 5, whatever. I don't agree with anything she says. She's like a 3 or a 4 on her opinions. But she a 10.
An insane person quickly for interviewing.
And that makes the whole Destiny rumor stuff even worse.
Alexander Dugin.
And she goes straight back to address the grenade that was just thrown through the door, and she nails it here.
Given my inspiration for the interview was from TVO's The Agenda, Steve Piken, who interviewed Dugin. I don't think we would be calling him.
So I thought there was a mistake for her to go back to that exact interview over and over again. I understand why she did because, she's trying to use a Canadian example, but Warren Smith does a good job of showing other credible and respectable journalists interviewing dictators around the world.
I'm insane in this house. I think there is a deliberate effort to slander me for political purposes.
Look at all the other cases in which interviews like this have occurred.
I'm not formulating this individually. Alexander Dugin is a Russian political philosopher, and he's really influential in shaping Russian policy at the highest level.
You are known as Putin's Rasputin, and I've even seen Putin's brain.
Alexander Dugin has appeared before so many other American journalists. No one would make these accusations about them. And she does her best to point this out, and I think she does drive that home.
Why would you want to platform someone like that?
The exact same reason Steve Piken did and TVO did.
I am shocked that this is even occurring. This feels more like a tribunal.
And so you went to Russia to stir up hatred against Jews?
I'm so sorry. What What are you referring to?
Look who you.
Yeah, this was a terrible low blow and totally unfair accusation, unjustifiable accusation on this lady's behalf. If I was running the government, I would censor her and I would censure her and I would fine her for what she just did there, because that is a misuse of political power. That is political abuse of a Canadian citizen by a Canadian representative. That is disgusting what she just did. What she just did there should be illegal, because this is a legal proceeding.
You deliberately.
As a representative of some Native Americans, I find it a very fun day. I've always liked Thanksgiving.
Made a trip to Russia to interview someone who is one.
I really got to find the. I'm not going to do it right now because it'll be a waste of time. But there's a picture of me and my grandma. But yeah,
One of the most anti-Semitic people around. Is it just to be controversial? Is that, do you find that?
sorry, great grandmother.
What part? Yeah, I do find it funny that you were accusing me of taking a trip to Russia to stir up hatred around Jews when I don't think Jews came up once during my interview with Alexander Dugin. I don't know where you're getting that from. And once again, Steve Peikin conducted an interview with him. I guess you would have to make the same anti-Semitic accusation against TVO.
That's absolutely correct. We have footage of
That was
of
a
him
great
appearing on
response on Southern's part.
60 minutes. Would you say that about 60 minutes?
Do you agree with his views on Ukraine?
No, I don't think we should kill the Ukrainians. On the contrary, I think we should be trying to not kill anybody. Not a big fan of killing people, Ukrainian or otherwise.
And do you prescribe to his anti-Semitic views?
No. Once again, you're interviewing me right now. Do you agree with all of my opinions?
No, I actually find some of them quite offensive.
What did Tucker Carlson do when he had the opportunity to sit down?
The problem with using Tucker Carlson as an example here is that I'm pretty sure that this lady hates Tucker Carlson and hates everything he stands for. So it wouldn't be the best example. So it's good that Lauren didn't bring that up. But yeah.
Vladimir Putin. He took it. That was the interview of his lifetime.
Oh, and the lady that I couldn't think of that's the American equivalent of Lauren Southern is Ann Coulter.
The majority of journalists, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all of them were salivating at that, and they would have jumped at the chance as well.
You also said, though, in your opening, your views are rapidly becoming the views of the majority of this nation.
And my true experiences as a Canadian have informed my opinions. And to any members of this government who may be listening, I would suggest you familiarize yourself with these opinions because they are rapidly becoming the views of the majority of this nation.
Do you think the Great Replacement theory is going to become the views of the
What
majority
a
of this nation anytime soon?
fucking low blow. Now, I don't like the way she answers it. I think Warren Smith does like it, but I did not like her answer. I would have just said F you to the guy, and I would have been like, you are a prick for trying to equate me doing an interview here with that theory. Now, the problem is that Lauren Southern is on record promoting that theory years before. Another answer she could say is that, well, my views have changed over time, and that viewpoint is not what's on trial here. So what does that have to do with Russian influence? That's what I would ask.
That could mean so many things, and he's trying to box her in here and paint her as a racist.
Depends what you mean by the Great Replacement theory.
So the best thing you can do is turn it right back so you can get it clearly defined in their own words.
What do you mean?
Well, what do you mean by the Great? Well, that there's a...
I would be like, no, you tell me first, and I'll tell you whether or not I agree with that statement.
An active attempt to replace a white population with a non-white population. What do you mean by that?
I think that there are a lot of people that have concerns about the impacts of mass immigration, removing the culture in certain areas.
Yeah, there's a big difference between concerns over immigration and concerns about white people being the majority.
When we have these issues of so many foreign bodies.
I think American culture is good, and I think Canadian culture, as it has been represented in media, is good. So I think the cultures are important. I don't think the racial identity of the culture is important.
Buyers coming into this country and
I think historical representation being accurate is important, but that's a different thing.
inflating prices. When we have these issues of not putting the Canadian populace first, people want to hear these opinions. And I'm sorry.
So what she says there makes me think that Canada might be in the same situation that we were and currently are getting out of here in the United States, which is people can't afford food. So there's no way that whatever politicians in power anyway can stay in power. It's just not how things work. That is the recipe for a revolution, is when people can't eat. Like, once the Maslow hierarchy of needs are not being met, the government has to go. So I think that's a very dangerous cocktail to then put political pressure on people to submit to your ideology when your political ideology is clearly not working. So I think there's a lot going on in Canada. I'm very scared for where Canada's going. I hope the Canadian people win. And I hope the Canadian people get the rights that they deserve and get the freedoms that they deserve.
Sorry to tell you once again to the people here who might think that this is all for.
Lisa, I don't know if you saw the article, but prices have already dropped. McDonald's is lowering their prices. Walmart lowered some of their prices. Applebee's is lowering their prices, and so is Chili's in response to the cultural shift and people not being able to eat at their restaurants. So there is a cultural shift coming, and Trump being president and being president while these shifts happen means that he's going to get the credit for it. It doesn't matter if he's not actually responsible for it. Biden can't control taxation or inflation, but Biden gets the blame because he was the president when these things happen.
Foreign propaganda. It's not. No one told me to have these opinions. I grew up in Surrey.
What responsibility do individuals like yourself bear in preventing the spread of foreign influence?
I can answer that.
None.
For myself, I have a responsibility to say what I believe is true, to follow the logic, to get as close to the...
And I agree with Smith's answer here. I agree with Lauren's answer to this question. So I don't want to debate this on here because we're kind of doing something different, Lisa. But the short version is my wife is an economist, and she's kind of gone over the tariffs and the things with me multiple times. We've had this discussion a few times. She thinks that in the long term, in the long run, the tariffs are going to be a great thing for the United States. I don't know the math. I'm not pretending to know my wife's opinion beyond what she's told me, but that's her opinion. She thinks that the tariffs will actually help. Mind you that her opinion of the situation, the international political situation, is different than the American media's opinion of the international situation globally with the economy.
the truth as I can and strive to try and get there. That's all that anyone can do. That's all that she can do. End of story.
What measures do you take?
I ensure that every contract I sign and have ever signed in media gives me full creative control of every single thing I say and publish. That's how I ensure it. I think that it is rich that I am sat here and being asked what I have to do to stop foreign influence and foreign interference as a Canadian citizen while we sit here with MPs like Jennifer O'Connell, who said boo-hoo to Conservatives who wanted actual elected politicians working with foreign governments to be exposed. I'm not looking to be an asset of any government, foreign or domestic for that matter. So I was not happy with the idea that I would be working for. I was certainly happy with the integrity of my work, all of which was done of my own volition, all my own opinions. And if there's any concerns.
So the difference between me and Lauren Southern here is that I'm very pro-American. So I don't have a problem supporting America and pushing an American agenda, if you will. So that's where me and her would disagree. She doesn't want to be an asset for any nation. She doesn't want to do any talking points, which, like I said earlier, talking points are the divorce between the presenter and the audience. Like, it's just not a good thing to do. But I do think that it's okay to be proud of your country and it's okay to support your country. So that's where me and her disagree. I'm very pro-American.
By this committee about anything I may have published that was not factual, I'd be happy to correct that. But
where's everyone else from Tenet Media? Tim Pool, is he going to be summoned before Congress?
I've been wondering that too. I want to see the rest of Tenet Media go to Canada and do this. But I don't think they will. They'd probably have to do because you don't want to get arrested. So I think they would have to do a video conference with the Canadian government. But I would like to see that happen. I would like to see the other prominent members of Tenet Media testify.
Or is Lauren Southern being summoned because she's a Canadian and that's just how the Canadian...
Oh, I think she's a scapegoat. I think she's an easy target because Lauren Chen wouldn't answer anything. Lauren Chen's not going to leave America where she's better off, whether she's found guilty or innocent, to go to Canada where she's going to be tar and feathered. So no, the only the only whipping boy they have is Lauren Southern, and that is not good.
Canadians' role. That alone says a lot.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Oh, I totally want to do the debate with Hassan and Genk. If they bring it over to YouTube, we'll watch it together. If it stays on Twitch, I'll have to figure out how to do that, but I'm pretty sure we can watch it on here as well. Okay, let's go back. Whew. Okay, we did that one already. Here we go.
Come from, whereas the genesis of that recently, definitely from COVID. And I think collectively, the government and the social media websites, the way that this cultural shift that we have ever seen. Hi guys, today I wanted to talk to you all about what I believe to be probably the biggest cultural shift that we have ever seen, if you're anywhere around my age, except for maybe September 11th. I think that this cultural shift has been observed now for about 2 to 3 years, and when it really was codified...
I think it's been growing for the last few years.
Like, yeah, this is happening.
wave.
It's when Trump won the U.S. election. And now, in the aftermath of that, I think that you can very clearly see people are emboldened by that. They're galvanized by it. And
What would you guys think if I put an American flag over here? I have the... I have Batman. I have my interpretation of the Bible stuff. I have my Electra for my comic book stuff. I want little backgrounds that I can shift out. So when I'm doing my comic book stuff, I can have one background, and when I'm doing my I don't know, religious, political stuff, I can have a different background. Let me know.
and people are much more willing to share their viewpoints on things that have been
But I've been wanting to put an American flag back here for a long time.
much more conservative.
I have this, but the cats keep on knocking it over, which is like a little play version of my my display that I have over here for my swords.
Much more traditional than what I think a lot of people would, expect or maybe have you believe. And so I wanted to talk today about why that actually happened, why I think it happened, and where the culture is going to be going from this perspective, right? From this direction. And so anyway, the first thing you have to do in order to explain where it's going to go is to explain where it came from. So the reason why I think a lot of this happened, and we've had a shift, and before I do that, I'll also...
I want us to stop the show at around 12 midnight or 12:30. I don't want to go later than 12:30 because I still need to weight lift and I got to work tomorrow morning. So if we don't get to where we need to go, I'm going to stop automatically at 12:30. If I'm lucky, we'll stop at midnight. Right now it's 11:19 where I'm at. I'm in Central Time, so we'll go at least till midnight. I don't want to go though past 12:30. Okay.
Explain where I think this shift is coming from. I think that we are shifting away from a more censorship heavy, a more, censored speech heavy, compelled speech heavy. And I think that you're seeing a lot of backlash against, what were considered to be like, protected types of thinking and protected groups of people. You're seeing a tremendous...
So I don't always agree with Asman. In fact, a lot of times I think he has really bad hot takes, but his more thought out takes, which I don't want to pretend like he's doing research and stuff, but the stuff that he's like hit on a few times, like his second or third take on it, that's just, I'm just saying take too much. His second or third try on a certain take seems to be really correct. Like I said, he's not always right. He's a lot of times really wrong, especially on his hot takes, but on his more thought out stuff or the stuff that he revisits multiple times, by his third take, he seems to have a pretty good understanding of whatever he's speaking about. I think that's because he's a little bit sociopathic. I don't mean sociopathic as in he's a crazy person, as in he doesn't seem to have good empathy, and he doesn't seem to have a good understanding, a good social understanding of how other people feel. So, like sociopaths, he can turn off the emotion and just look at the logic, which means that you're going to have a more concrete or more proper understanding of reality because you're not letting emotion influence you. Now, he's not completely emotionless. I'm not saying he's a sociopath or a psychopath or anything like that, but he has talked about on his own, especially maybe 2 or 3 weeks before he said that really stupid thing that got him in trouble, how he doesn't have a good moral compass, how he does have problems with empathy and problems understanding what's morally right or wrong. He doesn't have a strong moral compass. And so he just kind of mirrors whatever other people feel. So because he's just mirroring, I think he's a good reflection of what the social opinion is. And because he has a very large community, he has a lot of followers, he's getting a lot of feedback constantly. So even though that is basically a straight definition of audience capture, I think that means that he's a good reflection of what the actual consensus among the populace is. I mean, he has over 1 million subscribers and 1 million viewers, so like it's a good amount of people that he's getting feedback from, and that he's vomiting out that kind of consensus of all their views put together, that mishmash of all these different viewpoints.
Tremendous amount of backlash against it. I think this is mainly evidence.
And it is a
whether you
loop that
consider
repeats on
abusive
itself and all that
comments, you can
stuff.
see this in
Yeah,
comment
that's true.
sections of any game or like any video. I think that in general, you're just seeing a massive backlash against what people believe to be authoritarian levels.
I'll be right
of,
back. I'm going to
compelled
spray some
thought
more
and
nose
compelled
spray.
speech.
I'm
And
sniffing a
the
little
big
too much.
surprise, where did compelled thought and compelled speech come from? Where's
Be right back.
the genesis of that recently? Definitely from COVID. And I think collectively, the government and the social media websites, the way that they handled people that were dissenters during COVID, the way that they handled that caused a schism in the trust of the people into the government, into these companies, into anything. And I don't think that schism, I don't think that disconnect is really going to be mended anytime soon. I think it's probably going
I agree.
to take 10 to 20 years for that.
The distrust that came about due to the lies that were promulgated to fight Trump, to fight conservative Christianity, to fight evangelicalism, hurt the movement against those things. New atheism fell apart because of this. You can't lie to get to the truth. And you can't lie to defend the truth. This is why evangelicalism and fundamentalism, especially American evangelicalism, is falling apart. This is why woke progressive Christianity is going to take over Protestantism. It just is, because you can't use a lie to defend the truth, and you can't use a lie to get to the truth. It just doesn't work. The same thing here. When you're fighting against, whether it's Christianity, whether it's the Bible, you can't lie Because the moment that you lie, the moment that you're putting out propaganda, the person who you're listening to, who knows the Bible better than you, is going to stop listening. Politically, it's the same thing. Because you use lies and propaganda to control the populace will not trust you, which means the news media lost all of its credibility. So it doesn't matter if you tell the truth now, you've cried wolf one too many times, especially when it comes to Trump. So even if he's guilty of something now, no one's going to believe you. It was a mistake to go that hard on the rhetoric, and you lost the election. And you're going to lose the culture war because of it.
That trust to be rebuilt, because people would be hearing, oh, well, it's going to take 2 years, or sorry, not 2 years, excuse me, that's actually what it did take, 2 weeks to stop the spread, and just wear a mask, this will solve it, just take your vaccine, this will solve it.
Yeah, that was a dumb thing to say, even though that was Fauci, and that was under Trump, by the way.
And I think that the messaging for COVID in general was very authoritarian in many cases. And I think that also there were countries besides the United States that were even more authoritarian with how they handled COVID. And because of that, guess what happened? You had a lot of people who were like, yeah, this
Canada, the UK,
is fucking bullshit. We don't believe
New Zealand.
this, and we want to be able to think for ourselves. And when they did that on social media, they got in trouble. Now, you can think that that's a good thing, or you can think it's a bad thing. I'm not really going to try to convince you one way or another, but I think that really the big shift for that was COVID is what really started building up that resentment, and then that resentment finally boiled over, and people were able to express it when I believe Elon Musk bought Twitter. Because before Elon Musk...
I think Elon Musk is a major factor on here. I think we'd still be wearing masks if it wasn't for Elon.
Bought Twitter, there was almost no avenue on social media that you could actually speak your mind.
Maybe this makes me part of the problem, but during the lockdown, I would only wear my mask for work. I wouldn't wear the mask any other time. Only when I had to go places where the mask was required. When I would go to places that it was not required, I wouldn't wear it.
Mind and give like a honest opinion on things besides maybe 4chan.
Like, I got my vaccines, and that's all I cared about. I didn't care about anything else.
Right, on poll. And so besides that, you couldn't really say what you think. You can't say it on Reddit. You can't say it on YouTube. YouTube is
because I have an understanding of how masks work, and I know that masks don't protect from that, so I didn't care. Yeah, it's supposed to protect the other person from getting sick. Whatever. You can't wear the same mask for hours and hours and hours and have it be effective. So because I understood how masks work, because I was interested in the bubonic plague and other stuff like that just before all this stuff broke out, I didn't care. I just wanted the vaccine. I was like, I know a vaccine would actually help the situation. So that's what I wanted. That's what I was hoping for. The vaccine that we ended up using is not the kind of vaccine that I would have preferred, but I still took the vaccine because I believe in science and medicine. But like I said, I also believe in free speech and freedom of expression and free choice. And it's only recently that I went from a free choice point of view to a more conservative point of view.
Probably the most, the most liberal with that. You can pretty much say almost as much as you want. But, YouTube does still have a lot of restrictions, more so than Twitter, for example. You can't say what you want on Facebook.
And the fact that you can't express certain opinions on Facebook, on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Twitch is bad. That is true repression, and that is suppression, and that's not good. And my channel has been throttled for years, and I've been shadow banned off and on for years. It sucks, man. And I'm not even the most controversial person out there in the world. Most of my opinions line up with science and, popular secular opinion. Most of them do. Like, I can't deny that. But even me having mild and sometimes strong centrist Christian opinions gets me throttled and gets me shadow banned and other stuff like that. And I realize I do martial arts. I realize that I do things that are considered toxic masculine. Whatever.
Facebook, you can't say what you want on old Twitter, and basically all of these social media platforms that people used were used as basically tools to compel speech and to suppress people's thoughts. And I think that if you just take a step back and you think about this from an abstract, I think that you need to come to the realization that people don't like being told what to think, they don't like being told what to say,
Yeah,
and they
people don't like being told what to think, they don't like being told what to do. They just don't like it.
like being told that, and it didn't want to be told what to do, right? I mean, at the end of the day. And so
It's one thing to tell someone what they can't do. It's another thing to tell someone what to do. And so many restrictions of what you can't do is already telling someone not to do something is the best way to get them to do something. You add onto that compulsions where you're going to like make them do something to express something. No, you've lost the war. The people will reject your message. They have to do it voluntarily, otherwise it won't work.
So anybody who's trying to take an authoritarian stance, trying to tell you what to do, you're going to automatically get a negative response from that, at least here in the United States. And so that's happened, I think, as
Even as a Catholic, our American individualism gets in the way of submitting to certain Catholic doctrines, and it's hard to submit to an authority because we are so individualistic, and the rights of the sovereignty of the individual is so important here in the United States.
a result of COVID.
Every man is their own king, that kind of thing.
Musk buys Twitter, and now all of the people who didn't exist are making up for lost time. Like, I'm not saying this is a good thing, but holy shit, there is a lot of racism on Twitter now. Oh my god. And do you want to know why there's a lot of racism on Twitter? I'll tell you why. It's because there's a lot of racist people. That's
That's the real reason. It has nothing to do with policies. It has to do with the fact that there are racist people. I have to block people all the time. I want to be very clear. No one's being racist to me. No one's being homophobic to me. But there will be recommendations of people, and I'll click on their thing, say, oh, that's an interesting thing, and I'll click on it. And then underneath will be people who support that person, and it'll be a whole bunch of like F slurs and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm out. I block the person. So I finally now have to use the block because I don't want to hear it. I'm not interested in hearing people degrade other people or denigrate other people, regardless of who they are or what they believe.
reason anybody who can speak English all over the world, except for maybe a couple of countries, a few countries probably more like it, can make a Twitter account and express exactly what they think. And so, big surprise, you're going to have people that live in totally different cultures expressing viewpoints that are not congruent with liberal Western values. And this has been a very, very upsetting reality for many people that use Twitter, but in my opinion, I find it to be a very sobering fact. I think it's extremely important to know what people are actually thinking, rather than having a manicured, curated, and censored view of the world.
Because you think you're, and this is part of, again, why the Democrats lost the election, because they had a curated audience. So they thought everyone was agreeing with them because they don't allow dissenters into their audience. So because it's very curated, because you have block lists, you have blockchains, you have no way to hear the opposing side. So yeah, you think everyone's agreeing with you. So you think you're winning. When in actuality, everyone who you've rejected has agreed with each other, and they actually outnumber you by a great majority.
That immediately shatters whenever you introduce it to actual reality, which is what I think happened with the 2024 election. I think that people imagined this was going to happen because all of the celebrities said this was going to happen, all of mainstream media said this was going to happen, and then the day comes and it's actually something totally different. And I think that what this has really happened is that
Yeah, you're not looking at real data. You're looking at curated, selective, biased data points and biased people who already agree with you.
people are pushing back against basically there is a false god of authoritarianism that a lot of people online have prescribed to. They have been worshiping this false god. And I think that they are doing that because their other previous gods were determined to be false. There's always the quote of God is dead from Nietzsche, but that's only half of the quote. The full quote is God is dead and we have killed him. I think that the society that's totally killed God, there's no sense of religion in culture anymore. And I think that's by the way, that's very upsetting for many people. Religion is a very reassuring thing for many people. I am not a religion enjoyer, personally. I think that you guys probably know that. I'm much more of an enlightened, euphoric atheist. But at the end of the day, I can recognize that it does have an ordering, I guess, like function in a lot of people's lives. And so when you're taking that away from people and they don't have access to what would be a way to order the universe and a way to see how things are, they're going to invent their own way to order things. And I think that the way that they did that was they replaced religion with political dogma. And I think this has happened in a lot of cases. And really people that attach their...
And this has been observed by many, many people, not just Asman.
and like their identity and like their feelings onto these different movements, I think that for many of them, they're looking for something that religion or some form of like existential reassurance would give them. And I think that the movements, whether it's a political movement, whether it's a social movement, whether it's a social cause, I think that those
And
movements.
this is again going back to what we were watching earlier. I don't think the activist was the best spokesperson for the current moment on trans issues or on any issue. I think a down-to-earth person actually going through it would be much more effective. Even if they're using rhetoric, someone who's actually living the life, who's actually talking from their own viewpoint and from the struggles that they face and not using talking points would be more effective in convincing the popular culture that their view is correct. Not the activist who's using talking points and rhetoric that they think is effective. Because all that's doing is turning off the audience from listening to them or paying attention.
Movements actually for a lot of people now are filling the place that religion previously had. And I think that if you don't think that's true.
And if you want an example of this, my wife's an atheist, and when we go to church, and we've gone to different churches, we've gone to Baptist, we've gone to non-denominational, we've gone to Catholic. When she goes into there and she hears them preaching, once they start, like the actual service, she'll stay awake for. She can go through the Bible reading and all of that. Once they start preaching, once they start doing the sermon, once they're doing the homily, whatever you want to call it, she just falls asleep. She just ignores it. She tries to stay awake. She starts falling asleep. She starts getting upset. She doesn't enjoy the preaching. She doesn't enjoy it. Like it's not fun for her. It's an ideology that's being thrown on her that she hasn't accepted yet. So why does she want to listen to it? The same thing here. When you have the activists talking the talking points, nobody wants to hear it. So the only people listening to you are people who already agree with you.
Just look at how they fucking defend them. I swear to God, there's people, you'd get less pushback from blasphemy in a lot of churches. And so, yes, people get very, very, very attached to these things because they built their entire identity off of them. And I think also this is especially true with young people. And with young people, it's that they've had unironic arrested development from COVID. And I think this is true not just for, it's like, oh, the kids are retarded. No. I think this has happened for a lot of people, including young adults. And so you have people that spend, let's say the ages of, like 15 to 18 locked down in COVID. Well, big fucking surprise. Whenever they turn 18, they're not going to know how to act, and they're going to probably still be acting like 15-year-olds. And so you have people that have been developmentally, basically arrested, and they've taken 3 years of like social development and socialization and just pretty much outsourced it to a social media website that's fed them a worldview that's completely distorted. It doesn't represent.
And that doesn't represent reality at all.
Anything in real life. And now they go into real life, and the dissonance between what they believe the world should be and what the world is gets bigger and bigger, and I think it makes people angrier and angrier. And I think that that's really where a lot of the hostility is coming from. It's the refutation of those types of people that have used political dogma and social, like socio-political issues.
It said reputation, but he was saying refutation with an F.
And they've replaced religion with these things, it is a pushback against those people. And the reason why I think this pushback is happening is very simple. It's because people just don't want to hear what they're saying, and they don't agree with it. It's actually just that simple.
It's actually what I just said.
And so for a long time, you were not able to express your disagreements. You were not able to tell anybody that, like, yeah, I don't actually think this is true. This isn't really what's happening.
And now you're able to, and so you're just spurting it all out because you have like 4 years of repressed feelings just coming out. Actually, more than 4 years. You have 8 years of repressed feelings just vomiting out. And so you have people saying the stupidest things ever because they're finally allowed to say it again. Back when YouTube allowed shitposting, I think YouTube was actually healthier. No, I did not. Although I'm assuming you're talking about the PETA thing that they came out about the turkeys. But no, I did not get stuff today. I made a light single plate meal for me and my dad because he doesn't eat as much as he used to, so I didn't do a whole turkey. I got 2 little turkey sample thingies that they had from HEB, and then I added layers of turkey. Is it deli cuts? Like the thick deli cut turkey slices, and then I put some stuffing, and I put some gravy on top of it. That's what we did. It was good.
Happening. and because you would be banned. But that all changed when Elon Musk bought Twitter. Because when Elon Musk bought Twitter, everybody who had an opinion was able to say what that opinion was. For better.
Yeah, if you go to Blue Sky, it's really curated, and I think Twitter now is actually way less useful, especially when you look at the news feeds and all of that. You don't have the news as fast or as quick, and Blue Sky doesn't have that news function in the same way that Twitter did. So the reason why I used Twitter initially is no longer there. But to get an idea of what people think, you go to Blue Sky. You can't see what people think. It's a very, either you agree with this point of view, this progressive liberal point of view, or you're not on the platform, or you don't say anything. But on Twitter, you can see people disagreeing with each other. You can see people have differing opinions. So it makes Twitter a more honest reflection now of what people actually think. Yeah, it is. B.S. Lewis says, Blue Sky is a safe place for my feelings. It really is.
Or for worse. And I think that we've seen a lot of both of those. And so now what we've had is that we have tons of people that feel, uniquely emboldened in a way that they hadn't really in probably 10 years on social media, given the level of censorship and control. And now people are going and saying what they really think. And I think that they're doing so in a manner that is making up for lost time. And another big component for this is that I think that there has been what I would really kind of refer to as emotional blackmail that's been going on for a very, very long time, where you can't have certain opinions about certain topics because it can be perceived as being mean, or you can be seen as a bad person. I think that there's been a level of fatigue that is caused for people, and it's like eventually, for example, somebody thinking that they don't want illegal immigrants in their country, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're like a racist or a Nazi. And so because of that, and the emotional escalation and the emotional
Seriously, I might as well just never try to get monetized again.
blackmail that people use in order to try to force people into having these certain types of worldviews, the optics of these arguments oftentimes become more important than the arguments themselves. It's kind of like what I've said before, is that the strongest argument isn't an argument. Many people do not operate based off of logic or reasoning. They operate based off of emotion and feeling. And big surprise, that's been what's taken over a lot of things. And also, this is a very important component. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's not like this is totally going away. I think that we're just replacing one form of this behavior with another. And that's very worrisome to me. And I think that really what's going to continue to happen is you're going to have more people pushing back against, established social norms as much as possible, and making a push more towards traditionalism, more towards conservatism. And I think that this is also happening again because of that lack of meaning and culture. You don't have the same shared culture that something like a religion provides, and because of that, you're having tons of people that don't know what to do with their life. They don't know who they are. They don't know what their identity is, because the previous things and previous lives that have given them that identity are now being taken away or have been taken away. I think probably the best example of that is with jobs. So when somebody has their job replaced by AI or replaced with automation, and they're not able to get a new one or something like that, and they are disconnected from the value of their work, I think that, again, there's something that's
I know some people just jumped into the room. What do you guys want to do next after this one? Do you want to do breaking points, or do you want to go to base camp? This one here. It's going to be the same topic of the vibe changing here in the U.S. Let me know what you guys think. I'll put a little poll if no one answers. Just put a 1 for breaking points and put a 2 for base camp. Just put it in the chat, guys.
Existential that's taken away from that person, because now they no longer can take pride and take pleasure in the idea that they have done good work and they are contributing to their community, or they are doing something that's positive. And of course, obviously, why is that? Number one, it's because a lot of these jobs are, computer jobs, and so it's not really as directly evident in the same way that, you can do something that's more physical. That's number one. And then also number two is they're not really being paid very well. So you have people that have shitty jobs, they're not being paid very well.
Cute, good joke. Binary joke.
Looking for some form of meaning in life and somebody to tell them that worldview is not going to last. Things are going to keep getting better. And anybody that sells that person a solution is going to have a lot of fucking buyers. And I think that's very clearly what's happened. So what I expect to see happen now is that you're going to see probably a lot of people who have been pushing back against the culture of cancel culture and people getting, banned for having wrong opinions on things. Obviously, it'll still happen sometimes. I don't know. Maybe I've got an example of that one way or another. But I think that, of course, sometimes that will still happen, but it has been much less common. And you're even seeing things like, I think that another another benchmark for this is that, you know, you can look back at the Hogwarts legacy, you know, the debacle with that and how angry everybody was with J.K. Rowling. And now that there's a new Harry Potter project, the studio that's doing it has even said, like, you know, it's her freedom of speech. She can think what she wants. And so I think that is a tremendous divergence from what previously was the case, where you were not able to have certain opinions about certain topics like that. J.K. Rowling had controversial opinions about trans people. Whether you agree with them or not, you have to acknowledge that they were controversial with a lot of people. And because of that, people didn't want Harry Potter existing anymore, right? And I think that after that kind of reaches its logical conclusion, where it's no longer seen as a reasonable response, and now it's just like an overcorrection that is fueled primarily by anger and frustration, then you're really going to see people kind of lose interest with that type of movement. And I think that's exactly what's happened. I think that a lot of people are just tired of having their opinions dictated to them. They're tired of not being able to think things that they believe are just a priori knowledge. Like, this is just, it is known to be the case. Obviously, there's the difference between men and women, etc. And this big split has happened. And now there aren't the same censorship apparatuses that maintain the previous power structure. And so you're seeing tons of people now speaking out against it, and really nothing happening because of it, for better or for worse, again. And so I think you're going to continue seeing that happen. You're going to continue seeing people pushing back against like these mainstream narratives. And I think that the pushback will eventually become just as oppressive as the narrative originally was, because that's the way the pendulum always swings. Things always keep going until there's too much, and they always stop when there's too little, right? That's it. And so, you know, people love to radicalize, people love to become extreme, and I think the internet has provided a perfect place for people to radicalize themselves. And I think...
Hello, Simone. I'm excited to be talking to you today. Today, we're going to be talking about the vibe shift in America post this election cycle. Some of my favorite streamers have been talking on this subject. This has like been a reverberating subject in the online right, starting with an Asmongold video, and then people commenting on the Asmongold video, and then people commenting on the Asmongold video. And I think it's because everyone knows it's true, and he was just the first to put a finger on it. And I'll go into my experiences of this. We'll go over some other people's experiences of this. But I want to hear from you first, Simone, as somebody who didn't even know that this is something that's being talked about, because you've been watching like left-wing streamers now. We need to talk about it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't even get into it. I'm loving
We will get into it, though. The one who thinks that she needs to like prep for war, insane.
I'm besotted.
She's people come to her house and like drag her away.
She's going to have her uterus removed, like actually.
Okay, for those of us who have a uterus to contend with, I personally plan to get mine fully yeeted before January 20th. Not just sterilized, removed. I already knew that I didn't want kids because pregnancy would be a disaster for me medically, but this incoming administration is my cue to make that decision final. My answer to your body, my choice is to entirely remove the part of my body they're trying to regulate. It is a rousing fuck you to any shitty man who voted for this.
So, yeah.
Oh my God, has she had kids yet?
No, but she's married to like a really sweet dude, so it's kind of sad.
No, and the dude he's a first generation Indian immigrant, so they're gonna come. He's not an illegal immigrant, is he? No. They're not coming from him, you psycho. This isn't She is preparing for her time in the camp, so like getting her bug out bag ready and everything.
Now.
Yes, I believe. I agree.
AFAB artist married to a first-generation Indian American. So we'll be going over how we plan to protect ourselves and others from proposed mass deportation plans, how to remain safe in public if you're an at-risk demographic, steps you can take to prepare for crackdowns on reproductive freedoms, and how to build community so that we can all lean on each other in times of need. So even if you are an able-bodied, cis-het white man whose family arrived on the Mayflower, this video will be useful to you too. We need as many people on the team as possible, and you do have a role to play. I also want to acknowledge that these protections don't necessarily guarantee that you won't still be detained or that the person who's questioning you won't still resort to violence. These are buffers, not shields.
I hope I don't know this person in real life, but man, her face looks real familiar.
And I'm sorry for that.
Well, but she's also arming herself. So, like, I appreciate the fact that she's like, get your firearms, get your concealed carry, go to the shooting range, know how to use your stuff. When you're not permitted to conceal carry, like, and carry concealed, like, have an actual weapon that you can use in an alternate. For example, I use a heavy bike chain.
If you cannot or will not purchase a gun, still arm yourself to the teeth in every way you can. Stash it all over your house, in your car, and on your person. I have knives hidden all over my house, as well as a hammer in my car and pepper gel and a homemade club stashed in my bag. Not every place you go will allow weapons.
Just FYI, if you're going to conceal carry, it's not smart to tell people what weapons you have. That is a tactical error.
So you need to build up some plausible deniability. That homemade club I mentioned, it's a heavy-duty padlock tied to a scarf. When going through security, simply remove the padlock from the scarf, and there you go. You now have two completely harmless and totally unrelated items. Bag of coins and a sock, same concept. Just separate them when you're going through security.
Like I'm liking, like, there's some.
Are we gonna get like leftist militants like we've had rightist
militants?
There are.
I was going through the comments on her YouTube video, and it was like, left-wing prepper here. Like, also make sure you know how to forage. Like, they're out there, and it's funny because there's this like full circle where I'm like, you sound exactly like me. but for some reason you think that like everything's gonna fall apart now. This is so weird. But whatever.
You think you're coming to your house. No, they are delusional in the extreme, and I think like actively dangerous.
It's not perfect, but you can mess up somebody's knees pretty bad, and that makes escaping a much more viable option. You need element of surprise to make it work, though, so make sure you're fast. It's not an effective enough weapon to be used as a deterrent, so the time...
I was about to say, yeah, without the element of surprise, you're not going to really do much, because, like, literally in martial arts classes, you train how to, like, block weapons. You train how to, like, go with the flow. Like, that's literally part of the training. That's why guns kind of took over, because you could defend yourself against even the best weapon, even a spear. So, yeah, no, there's a reason why guns won. They're way more effective. Just because they'll carry a gun.
Between you revealing you have it and it making contact should be as close to zero as you can manage.
Well, no. I my favorite part about her, I just have to gush because I'm like in love. Like she's amazing. Just from like
And body armor. Get body armor.
You know how I'm obsessed with weird subcultures. Like you know, I had this like time where I went through all these weird Japanese subcultures and you just deep dive on them and you get obsessed. She is
also, if you're talking about concealed carry, that is tactically inconsistent and not smart. Like one of the reasons why so many fighters have short hair is because you don't want your hair pulled. You don't want dangly things that can be pulled out of you if you're in a fight.
There's only really 2 videos of hers that are good for this, but she's an amazing view into this far left progressive subculture in the way that she views the world. She is late in life. She became deaf, so she knows sign language, and most of her videos are teaching sign language. And she has one video on how to sign various progressive terminology, like your gender and if you're poly. And the amazing thing is there's this part of the video where she's like, well, in ASL there are no pronouns, but I'm still going to walk you through how to introduce your pronouns. It's the best video I've ever
heard
seen.
that this is like a big problem they have in like, I don't know, Finland or somewhere in Northern Europe where they don't naturally use pronouns. So what progressives in the country have done is use...
This is what I was talking earlier about, where you're trying to force unnatural changes into the language. If you have cultures where things are already gendered, trying to do a non-gendered language push doesn't make sense, because that's culturally not only insensitive, but like destructive. It just erodes culture. If you're in a culture where there are no pronouns, adding multiple pronouns for identity purposes and political purposes also doesn't make sense. Because again, it's a top-down thing, and it doesn't actually work in the culture that you're in, because there aren't any pronouns anyway. So it only works in English, and if the majority of the English speakers reject it, then you're pushing not only a non-winning idea, but you're actively trying to force your opinion on people that have actively rejected it. So it's very gross and it's very stupid. So it's both ineffective and illogical and just a violation of rights. So it's weird that something that's so cute and that could be a form of expression ends up becoming, once you start trying to force it on people, becomes a violation of their free thinking and their free expression. So it's really weird how that's so badly miscalculated by these progressive scholars who started promoting this stuff back in the day.
Use English pronouns, added them to their language just so they can force people to use the right pronoun.
Yeah, that seems to be the same phenomenon here. But yeah, I loved it. And it's actually like, aside from it being about culture wars or like left versus right, it's just really fascinating to see someone walk through, like, here's the etiquette in ASL of like how to introduce pronouns and how to explain to people that you're poly, and here's what the language is, and like the construction of the language, and like also the etymology of the sign language, which she went over. Like, well, you know, like lesbian started out as this, and part of it was like a sex joke, but then like, because deaf people often really center around church communities, like the language evolved this way. And it's fast. Like, it's a really good video. Like, I'm super and her Project 2025 prep video, which you first referred to, where she's talking about just like, all right, the world's going off the edge. It is one of the most fascinating views into this mindset.
Insanely boring. Oh, she's got poor timing. She delivers information way too slowly. She could be way tighter. It could be way more interesting. She makes analogies that don't make any sense, even if you assume her world perspective.
Yeah, she presents.
I would love to get an editor and a producer. I really would, because I would love for my shows, for my episodes to be way better and way faster. That would be awesome to have someone helping me make my content and even doing research for me. I'd be totally down to have a research team and have a producer and have an editor. I don't have that kind of money, but that'd be awesome.
Incident
Reason
is
why
like
she's a small channel.
we'll make like a Game of Thrones analogy, and then it like completely fell apart. But no, just from it like an anthropological perspective for
No, an anthropological perspective, I like looking at her the same way I like looking at Christian. You know, like
yeah, no, but like so that has inherent worth.
Christian thinks he has a magical world that's all real, and she
And
thinks
that's fascinating.
the right is going to come and drag her from her house because she's gay. Like this is or fake gay. She's not real gay. She's dating a guy and she's a girl. But
No,
gay
now
in
she's
that-
married. No, they're happily married. They're
No,
sweet.
gay in that way where she has identified herself as not a her, but like a
Oh,
they
it's
or
queer.
something. And so she's like definitionally gay, and her husband's oh my god, I hate these self-identified gay identities. I'd be so mad if I was like an actual gay person who fought for gay rights for so long, and now people like this can just be like, I identify as cisgender, and now I'm queer. In fact, I'm.
There's a lot of friends that I have that are in that community really hate the pronoun thing and really hate that someone can be in a hetero relationship and still identify as queer, not bi, queer. And they're just like, it makes no sense. This is not me talking, this is them talking. So I just think it's funny. Obviously, if you talk to someone who's like 22, 23, they don't have any problem. There's no cognitive dissonance happening. When we talk to like someone who's been gay identifying or lesbian identifying or bisexual for, and they're over 40, they're just like, what?
More queer than you, gay man. Sorry, going over the video again, I realized I assumed she was identifying as some form of gay by calling herself an AFAB, but when I looked up what AFAB meant in progressive brain melt, apparently it just
A
means
female
woman.
assigned at birth.
So,
Yeah.
like a normal woman.
It's a female assigned at birth.
Sorry, I know you're not supposed to say normal, but yeah, it means a normal woman. Sorry, but let's get into this actual topic, because I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay.
Has there been a vibe shift?
It's hard for me to say because I'm not.
But she
I'm
might still identify as queer, so, or as an ally or something like that.
not as online as you are. I will say that there is there's not as much freaking out
Hey,
on
Thomas.
as I expected.
Forgot
And I
to
think
say
a lot
hi.
of that's because a lot of the people that were catering to that extremist, doomerist view didn't really hold those views themselves and thought their audience
We're going to go 2 more minutes on them, then we're going to switch over to the other vid, and then we'll call it a night there.
did. And then after Trump won by a significant margin, they realized, oh, I don't have to front for that so much. Like the pressure
Well,
is
there's also a reputational risk to continue doing that, because a lot of them said that their side was going to win the election. They lost
Mhm.
that prediction.
Yeah,
and
they lost credibility. So to continue promoting something that lost, if you're not actually a true believer and you're saying things in bad faith, you don't want to keep going down that route because that's a losing route, and you want audience share, you want people to believe in you. The way the fact that the ratings dropped so much for all the channels that were promoting progressive talking points right after the election, it's just a sign of defeat. So you have to, if you're not a true believer, you have to jump off the train and you have to chase where the audience is, because your audience is not where you thought it was.
now all of these other insane views, which I bet they knew weren't going to happen. They didn't really believe any of this stuff. They now have to walk those back because if, they don't come and break down this girl's door and take her and her boyfriend away for identifying as demigender unicorns, that she's going to be like, hey, they were all lying to me. So there's that aspect. But I'd say as an online person, very online, I've noticed a giant vibe shift.
Really?
A vibe shift online and in-person interactions.
Okay, what's going on? Break it down for us offline nerds, apparently.
Offline nerds or people who just don't interact with other people that much, I guess. Yeah. So the first is it's like this weird, like big coming out day for a lot of people, where a lot of people who I thought of as left-leaning or centrist
Are
seem
not
to
coming
be
out as
quite
conservative.
happy that Trump won,
Yeah.
and are sort of coming out and being like, yeah, I wanted this. Some of them even don't seem to have realized, because I've seen this in some interviews when they're like, I thought I was ambivalent to who won, but when Trump won and looked like he was winning, I got really excited. And then I realized I haven't been ambivalent at all. I wanted Trump to win for a long time. And I think that that's another thing that has happened within this community.
But again, it's not a political thing. It's a pushback against the culture. So Trump represents a type of counterculture to the counterculture. So it's an interesting thing that's happening, an interesting dynamic that's developed.
A lot of people
in the culture at large.
They thought that they were, swallowing their pride. And I think even in the first Trump election cycle, that was an election cycle that I feel that Hillary lost. I think a huge part of the Trump vote came from people who despised Hillary. In the Biden election cycle, there were still a lot of these never-Trumpers or transitioning never-Trumpers.
But this is also a rejection of the counterculture. It really is. This is a cultural war thing. This isn't a political thing. I don't think anyone thinks Trump is a good moral person unless you're just an idiot. Or a sucker. I think people are rejecting the progressive left and the entertainment culture and the social media culture. Like it's all being rejected. They're tired of censorship. They're tired of being told what to think. They're tired of being told how to speak. They just want to go back to being themselves.
Trumpers around. When I saw this, I think what we have seen is a full transition of a portion of the U.S. population into enthusiastic Trump voters. And we'll go over the data on that. And not just enthusiastic Trump voters, but enthusiastic Republicans in a way that I don't think that there have been this degree of enthusiasm before. So
We'll do this guy tomorrow.
There's a huge amount of
if we do a show tomorrow.
on the right now, and not like, and the left didn't have this.
Wanted to take a look at a pretty interesting CNN segment, taking a dive into how people are feeling.
So this is Breaking Points. I have no idea if they're over enthusiastic with their copyright claims or with their or anything like that. So this might be the only time we ever watch them on this channel. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But let's have fun.
About the Trump transition so far, Harry Anton breaks down the numbers. Let's take a listen.
President Trump's transition net approval. You go back to November of 2016. Look at this. It was just at plus 1 point. Just at plus 1 point. That was well below the historical norm. Look at where we are today.
2016, when it was, people were not really sure what was going on with him.
Harry Anton just pounding that ghost energy, clearly, day in and day out.
You're feeling that, huh?
Yeah, so I don't know how much to read into what this reflects of sentiments of the American voters, but I think where we can focus is the change. I do think seeing 2016 versus 2024 is interesting, and I wonder, Crystal, again, sort of contra conventional wisdom in Washington, if it's that, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not a man of the conservative movement. Tulsi Gabbard is now very much in the conservative movement, but does not come from that place. Mm-hmm. Trump's cabinet in 2016 was staffed with vanilla Republicans. I mean, he put Rex Tillerson in there, and I guess that was interesting. It wasn't a very drain the swamp move to just pluck the Exxon CEO. It's one of my favorite Trump moves in terms of actually undermining the drain the swamp messaging. We'll just take the CEO of Exxon and put him at the State Department and have fun.
That is the definition
Come on,
of the
get to a point. Get to a point.
Yes, it's so stupid. But on that note, he was pretty much surrounding himself with conventional Republicans, and this time around, I can see how
political life now. So he is, there are a lot of young people who have only known the Trump era. He is not this aberration in American politics at this point. So it makes sense that he would enjoy the sort of typical honeymoon period that all presidents enjoy, because now he's sort of like a typical presidential figure. Even as, if you look at historical norms, you saw the numbers really dramatically shift. I think it's the same thing. If you have both parties basically saying well, he's making some decisions that I'm okay with and I'm open to, et cetera, then yeah, you're going to have a public perception that this seems to be going pretty well. And then the last thing, and I actually think this is probably the most.
I think she over assumes how much social media actually influences the everyday person. Even TV shows and books and entertainment in general doesn't influence people as much as the producers of such things thinks it does. Don't worry, there is an influence there, but the majority of people know that just because you like Superman doesn't mean that you can suddenly fly. You know what I mean? The majority of people understand the difference between entertainment and reality. I'm not saying deeply. I'm just saying in general, most people do. So I think you're confusing what people enjoy listening to versus what people actually believe.
Most important point is that Joe Biden is so feeble, and the Democratic Party in general is so feeble and incapable of making a decision and taking any action. Just the sense of there's a lot of things happening and a lot of decisions are being made. I think irrespective of whether those decisions are good, bad, or indifferent, just the sense of action feels good to people. That someone is doing something and making decisions, and they're bold and they're controversial and they're taking charge. Now, does that last once those decisions actually have real world consequences?
I was thinking of you as you were talking that was interesting is if you remember back in 2016, there was a frenzy every single day about all of Donald Trump's tweets. And he just posts into the ether on Truth Social now, like even sometimes on Twitter. And it doesn't, they're not making news cycles like they used to. There was just this sense of horror and norm shattering that you were talking about how he's been normalized and the country's been sort of acclimated to Trumpism. But even just the way that could be shifting public opinion.
Or really dramatically unprepared to Democratic and the Republican parties.
I'll be honest, this is going nowhere. Let's tease the video we're going to do either tomorrow or Saturday, which would be this guy. Because I want to see the full video of this one. We'll probably do it Saturday as a bonus super secret show. So a bonus super secret stream. Sorry, I missed my own trademark. So we'll do that one. But let's do a little tease.
We did not do it, Joe. Hello, and welcome back to A Bit Fruity.
I'm just going to be honest, that's way too much makeup. Even if you don't have a problem with makeup, I don't have a problem with makeup, by the way. I used to wear makeup. That's just too much makeup.
I'm Matt Bernstein. Thank you for being here.
I was a goth kid, for those that don't know. Those who are coming in here new for some reason at the very end of my video. But yeah, I was a goth kid. I had blue hair. I had mascara. I had eyeliner. I had black lipstick. I had black nails. So no, that's just too much makeup.
It's been a long week. During Donald Trump's acceptance speech, he allowed Dana White, the founder of UFC Fighting, which I had to Google, to take the stage. Standing on stage with Donald Trump's family in a room full of the campaign's most important and influential donors, Republican politicians, various billionaires, Elon Musk, Dana White thanked the young male influencers who so effectively turned out the young male vote for Donald Trump.
I want to thank some people real quick. I want to thank the Nelk Boys, Aiden Ross.
I mean, that's just smart. You want to engage with the younger audience, your younger voters. You want them to vote for you. It's the smart thing to do. And if you don't know them, have someone who does know them do the speaking.
Theo Vaughn, busting with the
Because it's a really old dude talking to a slightly younger old dude who's in connection with a younger audience who's talking to even younger supporters who can get out and get people to support Trump, to support your candidate. I'm running out of words.
Boys, and last but not least, the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan.
And turn out the young male
And
vote.
to be fair, Joe Rogan's also an old dude. He's super old.
They did. According to CBS exit polls, Trump won male voters under the age of 30 by 18 points this year, which is the same demographic that Biden won by 18 points in 2020. Who are these young men influencing other young men to the far right? What can the left...
This is not the far right. Donald Trump is not the far right. Your definition of the far right is insanely wrong. I've seen, like I said, I've seen two different people talk about him in the last week or so. That's why I want to do this video. But yes, his definition of the far right is not what the far right is. There's an actual far right, and who he's calling the far right is actually more like the centrist or maybe even liberal right, the left side of the conservative party. He's calling far right.
better reach these men? And how did an ideology about masculinity and women, once relegated to the...
No, let's see what this is. Chad. Oh, I can't see it. Let's see. Backslash. I don't know. I can't. My vision is not great.
Seedy corners of 4chan creep its way into the mainstream. As always on this show, whenever we're talking about the internet and politics, I ring up my friend and yours, Taylor Lorenz. Taylor.
I'm not a fan of hers at all.
Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having
I
me.
find her very bad faith, and I really don't like the things that she says. I think I disagree with like 90% of the things that she says. So.
And since you were last here, you have become an independent journalist officially.
Yes, officially.
Taylor is such an incredible journalist doing such great work. It is not an easy thing to go out on your own as a freelancer. It's what I do as a job.
I believe she was fired, but okay.
And takes balls. So congratulations, Taylor.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy.
Are you excited to talk about?
I don't know if it's true or not, but I saw the meme that was going around on her about her being 50. I don't know if that's really true. She doesn't look 50, but I thought that was funny. That's how much people don't like her.
the young men,
Yes. Let's speak to the men.
which is something I don't do a lot on this podcast. But boys, I'm speaking to you.
Gentlemen.
Gentlemen and gentle thems. If you would like to support the show,
I wonder who his audience is if he's not usually speaking to men.
would like more of the show, would like more of my post-election thoughts, which totally understandable if you don't want to listen to anything about the election anymore. But in case you do, you can get all of that on my Patreon, which will also be linked in the bio. You're so demure with your like, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
Whenever we do episodes together, we always end up like yelling and screaming about shit. But at the beginning,
It starts so calm, and then I'm like, and by the way, fuck that person.
I think we'll get there quickly.
Yeah, this is a triggering subject.
The portion of the internet that has become enormous, that has enraptured the young men of America, is generally referred to as the manosphere. And this is going to...
Okay, so I had actually a very good friend who fell into the manosphere and fell into the influence of Andrew Tate. He actually was paying for his courses and for his stuff, and he was living it out actually when I knew him. So I actually do have a dog in this race. I have a pony that I'm betting on. Oh my goodness. Don't do that. Don't do that.
It's going to be an episode about the manosphere. It's going to be an episode about the people who run it, about the young men who receive it.
Let's see who's his idea. Who's in the manosphere? Because the manosphere has changed a little bit. By the way, for those that don't know.
Is generally referred to as the manosphere, and this is going to be an episode about the.
There are female leaders of the manosphere, by the way. Just to be very clear. Pearl's
it's going
one
to be
of
an
them.
episode about the people who run it.
Okay, I don't know who that guy is. I think that's El Fuente. Suko is not relevant in any kind of way. Don't know who that is. I'm thinking that's Tate, and Tate is also no longer relevant. So his idea of the manosphere seems to be a past dated idea. There's new people involved. I think Rollo Terrassi, whatever the heck, I think that guy's still a big player.
About the young men who receive it and where they're at in life, and why we've seen this wild right-wing shift among young men in this very recent election. It's going to be about what the left can and can't do to combat it and why. And I think before we actually explore the manosphere...
Yeah, I think this will be a very fun bonus super secret show on... a bonus super secret stream on Saturday. So Saturday when I get out of work, after I do whatever it is I'm going to do, we'll do a bonus stream. I want to say let's do it around 11:30. Is 11:30 a good time? We'll do it an hour later than the normal show. And we'll just go till the video's over. I'll make sure to have some snacks and stuff.
I mean, what you think about this? I think it makes sense to start with incels.
Yeah, I agree.
Can you tell me...
No, incels are not relevant at all.
A little about the incel movement? I've
done videos outreaching to incels before. Let's just let him say what he's going to say.
This is one that I can do on my own, but
Let's chime in and we can do it together. Well, the incel movement it stands for involuntary celibate movement. It's sort of become its own identity almost outside of that, though. It started with these
There are a ton of femcells, by the way. So
communities of mostly young men online who felt really rejected by women and essentially felt like it was impossible for them to get sex from women or the type of connection from women that they wanted. So they would gather in these communities that essentially became more.
It wasn't just about sex. It was about that the women that they could get were very low quality, very over-sexualized, and that the women that they couldn't get would choose men who were hypergamently higher on rankings than them. And so they just thought it wasn't fair. And even I, who have never been single for very long, have felt that. I have a very good friend of mine, Josh, who's a Christian, born-again Christian. And can incel be a movement if it's involuntary? We'll get into that on our super secret stream. Actually, I want to talk about that. But I had a very good friend named Josh, who's very handsome. He's half Greek, half Japanese. His mother is very successful, and he could get a different girl every day. Every single day he had a different girl, and no girlfriend lasts longer than a week. He's married now. He actually married someone or dated someone who was a celebrity in one of the Big Brother houses, I think Big Brother UK or something like that. This guy is, I love this guy. He's more than just a friend. Like, he's someone who I consider family. I can get into how I met him, and he was trying to help me date a girl that, anyway, doesn't matter. He could get a different girl every day. And I was jealous of him because I could only get like 1 or 2 girlfriends a year. I felt like I wasn't competing well enough. And at the time, I was in great shape. I was like one of the best shapes I've ever been in my life. Like, this is pre-diabetic muscle loss, so like my muscles were huge. I remember one of the girls in this situation, her boyfriend did something like he slapped her or something like that, and I'm like, I will go beat the shit out of him right now. And she's like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, why? She's like, because you're so muscular, like you're so strong, and you'll destroy him. And I remember thinking to myself, wait, you can tell that I'm muscular and stronger than this guy? Because I was under the impression that the guy that she was with him because she thought he was handsomer than me, and thought that he was more successful than me, and thought that he was like, I was stuck in this kind of hypergamy way of thinking. This is during the time of pickup artists and mystery and all of that. Josh, my friend, tried to explain that no, it isn't that. It's your self-confidence. That's why you're not getting more girls. And I'm like, and so here's the situation where like this particular girl had a really terrible boyfriend, and I was like, let me help you out. And she was like, no, you'll kill him. Like, you'll destroy him. And I was like, I just want to go punch him in the face. She's like, no, you're like, you have this. Like, she gave me like a little list of all my good qualities. And I was like, oh, so you're not rejecting me because of the things that I think about. You're rejecting me because the things that you want are not the things that I am. Well, that's even worse. Like, I was just like devastated. I was like, oh shit. It doesn't matter how much money I have or how big my muscles are. You're never going to date me. Fuck. It was totally devastating to my ego. It's probably the most devastating thing that happened to my ego in my entire life. It was so great. It was such a rejection. And she got back together with the guy like in 2 weeks, and then they broke up again. Anyway, she was like best friends with the girl that Josh was trying to help me date. A professor of mine was also trying to help me date this particular girl. Didn't work out. I ended up dating someone completely different who was completely wrong for me, so it doesn't even matter. But even I, who have never gone longer than a year without being in a relationship, I've always had someone there. Even being married, and even when I'm out of shape, I've had women approach me to be in a relationship. Even I felt the devastation of that rejection. Even I felt lonely when I was in that situation. So you are not going to attack my arm. Let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. So I do feel that there's a lot there. There's a lot that we can talk about.
More and more radicalized and misogynistic.
Yeah, incel as a term was...
And during the pickup artist times, there were people who were misogynist. There was one guy in particular who was I'm going to say he was a friend. I mean, we had like 2 or 3 classes together, and I'd never hung out with him outside of school. This is when I was in college, and we hung out twice out of school. And the second time is when he like really let all of his misogyny out, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be friends with this guy. But this guy would be like what we think of as MGTOW, men going their own way, where he just hated women. And he was not a bad-looking guy either. He was skinny. He was kind of cool. But he totally believed in mystery. Mystery is a character in the pickup artist game. So I think, even though a lot of people like to give the red pill and MGTOW credit to the Matrix, I think it's a mixture, and I think it's really coming from the old pickup artist scene that crashed and burned when progressivism and wokeism took over. So it went from being pickup artistry to being like, okay, man, we're gonna team together and we're gonna fight this progressive wokeism that's coming. So I think that's what happened. I don't think it's the Matrix gave them like how to but I don't think it's The Matrix that actually inspired it. Because I love The Matrix, I love Fight Club, and I don't think that's where all this came from. Let's see. You're so strong and desirable. You should start a red pill pickup channel. Why would I do that? But only how to pick up nuns. No, thank you. I don't want to do that either. Okay, so that's it. That's well. Let me get to the 5-minute mark on this thing.
Originated in the 90s, ironically by a queer woman.
This is a great teaser for later. Yeah, it's actually incel is a feminist term, which is funny because then it gets adopted by men. It's funny.
Yes, which is
the irony.
Very funny.
It is very funny because incels are not generally associated with lesbians today, but it really
there's a lot of femcells. There are lesbian femcells.
Really took off.
I was friends with one. Like there are lesbian femcells
online in the 2010s.
They exist.
On websites like Reddit, but also on 4chan and 8chan.
There are people who just feel rejected because they don't feel like they live up to a certain standard. They don't understand there's people in their lives who already accept them.
And which, can you explain 4chan and 8chan? Because those are websites that I actually really can't explain.
Yeah, 4chan is a message board that's completely unmoderated. It's kind of, I mean, it's considered the front page of the internet because throughout the aughts, it's where a lot of early internet.
It's where also a lot of black hat hackers and white hat hackers hang out. So it's not exactly what she's talking about.
From users gathered. It's kind of like an earlier version of Reddit almost. Reddit's like the much more sanitized 4chan. And then 8chan is actually even more extreme than 4chan.
I know nothing about that. I know nothing about that.
And then you have a lot of incel forums now that really cropped up in the 2010s too that are just.
Okay, so we're going to stop it there. That's tonight's show. Let's go to the big screen. I need to do some weights and I need to go to bed. Thank you all for watching tonight. I know we did very little religious content this week, but I want to start expanding this channel beyond just anti-apologetics. I've already said that, already announced that I want to do that. I don't necessarily want to do politics, but you know, I don't exactly have a lot of time to do research on other stuff. So, and my gaming channel failed miserably, so I'm not even going to try that again. Go watch my comic book reviews on my alt channel. Go watch the new movie that I wrote may or may not be put up there in about a month or two when it comes out. But yeah, I did write another movie. I was not part of the production this time, but yeah. So we'll see. A different vision took over. But all my lines are there, so I am interested in promoting the movie and in people seeing it. And then what was I saying? What was I even talking about? Whatever. Saturday, super secret string, bonus super secret string. I'm not going to promise I'm going to do it, but I'm going to try to do it 11:30 Central Time here on this channel. Let's do that. That's what I was going to say. Watch Thought 4. Thought 4. That's my alt. Watch Want to Work Out. I do have new videos coming out. I just filmed some stuff with the jump rope and with the speed bag. I'm going to try to film a different exercise every day, and that'll be one video a week. I'm not going to try to do what I was doing before, which was daily uploads on that channel. That's not going to work for the way my life is right now. Anyway, thank you all. I love you all. Please, please, please forgive everyone for everything, including forgive yourself. And remember that God loves you, and so love everyone. Have a great night. I want to thank Lisa for Truth. I want to thank B.S. Lewis. I want to thank Thomas. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. If you're not subscribed to those channels, go subscribe. Anyone that we watched tonight, please subscribe to their channel. And if, let them know Ramon sent you. And thank you all. Have a great night. And here comes the music.
Yeah, I will always be a warrior. You can't stop me, you can't stop me now. Yeah, I will always be a warrior. You can't lock me, you can't lock me down. I will not lay down my own. will always be a warrior. Late nights, get lost, hard work, the cost. Can't quit, can't stop, this world all cut off. Don't have time to waste, not now. Need to find a way to get out, 'cause I'm gone in deep. Get lost in the weeds. You know it's all about the conquest. What's next? You gotta put the work in like you're obsessed. Think about what you want, what's your future? What kind of person would it take to seduce her? So what's next? Be obsessed with winning and your success. Make progress, this life is never promised. So feel blessed, live right, don't be too cautious. Trust the process. Be a warrior. You can't stop me now. Yeah, I will always be